Good evening. Tonight is Monday, March 7th, 2022, and I'm calling this meeting to order. The Orange County Schools Board of Education pledges to our families, students, staff, and the greater community to conduct our business in a courteous and productive manner, showing respect for fellow board members, staff, and citizens. The board asks its citizens to conduct themselves with the same courtesy towards all staff members and each other. As per board policy, Robert's Rules of Order will be used to conduct meetings. Following the Pledge of Allegiance, a moment of silence will be observed before we begin our business. Public comment will be held after the board adopts tonight's agenda. The board also asks that you check your cell phones and other electronic devices to be sure that they are turned off or on vibrate in order to avoid disruptions during the meeting. And if you would, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we begin our work this evening, I would like to recognize that Orange County Schools was established on land previously settled by the ancestors of the Occaneechi Band of the Saponi Nation. This board has made a commitment to honor and respect the heritage of Indigenous and all members of our Orange County Schools community, to work to undo decades of racial harm and to build to the best of our ability a community that fosters a sense of belonging for all of our students so that they may thrive and succeed. Please join me now for a moment of silence. Thank you. And I believe we are doing agenda adoption before our recognitions. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So do I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
A motion for Mr. Atherton and a second from Ms. McKenzie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you so much. Dr. Felder, I pass it to you tonight.
Well, good evening, Chair Doyle, Vice Chair Stevens, to the full board, to all of our students, staff, and families. Tonight, we have 5 recognitions. The first is for Women's History Month. So throughout Women's History Month, we celebrate the contributions of women. While it's important to celebrate women's history during the other 11 months too, during March, we can remember the sacrifices made by women for women to help make the world and our country a more inclusive place. Women's History Month was first officially created by Congress in 1987, but its roots go much deeper, starting with the suffragists fighting for women to get the vote in the early 20th century. International Women's Day still takes place on March 8th. On March 13th, 1913, the Women's Suffrage Parade in Washington, D.C. took place, where more than 8,000 women gathered to demand a constitutional amendment guaranteeing their right to vote. On March 22nd, 1972, the Equal Rights Amendment was passed in the Senate. Women's History Month is a time to reflect on the courage of women in past generations and to celebrate how their efforts and bravery afforded women the opportunities and freedoms they have today. It is also a great time to celebrate women who make a difference in your life, perhaps a mom, grandmother, sister, teacher, boss, or mentor. Without the efforts of women from generations before us, who knows if these influential women in our lives would have had the opportunity to succeed, including but not limited to the women in this room tonight. Next slide, please. March 6th through the 12th, so this week is National School Social Work Week, an opportunity for schools, communities, and partners to acknowledge and recognize the impactful work they do to support students, families, and their communities. Under the leadership of the School Social Work Association of America, the only national organization exclusively dedicated to the profession of school social work. This celebration will emphasize school social work contributions, focusing on the whole child, linking families to community resources, a valuable voice as part of the school's multidisciplinary team, and advocating for the profession of school social work. The theme for the National School Social Work Week 2022 is Time to Shine. The School Social Work Association of America believes that social workers shine brightly for their students, families, and school communities, shining hope, shining understanding, and shining respect. We hope you take time this week and in coming weeks to recognize the invaluable contributions of our school social workers on students in Orange County schools. Next slide, please. To encourage more families to take advantage of the healthy choices available with school breakfast, we celebrate National School Breakfast Week this week, March 7th through the 11th. This is a photo from breakfast at New Hope Elementary School. Busy workday mornings make it a challenge for many families to find time for a healthy breakfast. Fortunately, Orange County Schools offers nutritious school breakfasts complete with fruit and low-fat or fat-free milk to ensure students are fueled for learning each and every school day. This year, the United States Department of Agriculture is allowing all children to receive school breakfast and lunch for free without a lunch application. So it's a great time for families to give school breakfast a try. But we need your help to make sure meals are provided to Orange County school students at no cost to families again next year. Please do your part to ensure Orange County schools can serve breakfast for free again next year. All you have to do is complete a free and reduced lunch application today. When you complete a lunch application, you can impact services provided to students, both this year and next. Applications are available online and at each school. Thank you very much. And next. All right, and so the next recognition is with regards to Music in Our Schools Month. So for more than 30 years, March has been officially designated by the National Association for Music Education for the observance of Music in Our Schools Month, the time of year when music education becomes the focus of schools across the nation. This March, music educators and music students will be celebrating music education in their communities, demonstrating how music, the sound of my heart, resonates with them. This theme continues from 2021 to 2022 as schools observe Music in Our Schools Month. While the impact of the global pandemic continues to challenge music educators and students, the impact of music education is evident in how its social-emotional benefits have empowered students and brought joy in their communities. Next, and certainly not least, we want to recognize our Summer Careers Academy. So the Summer Careers Academy is a new registered youth apprenticeship program. This 8-week career training program that takes place effective this summer and connects students and young adults ages 16 to 24 in Orange County with new skills and paid work experiences in compelling career paths with a focus on skilled trades, and will expand to other industries such as healthcare and IT and other counties throughout the Triangle region in subsequent years. The inaugural program is specially designed to meet the needs of those from refugee and migrant families, as well as low-income students and students of color. Orange County Schools is beyond excited to participate, as we are dedicated to ensuring students graduate college and career ready, and we are dedicated towards building a skilled talent pipeline for the future. Chair Doyle, that concludes the recognitions for tonight.
Thank you so much, Dr. Felder. Okay, now is the time for public comment. After each speaker has been recognized, they will have 3 minutes to speak. The board will not have a discussion with any speaker. No profane or vulgar language will be permitted, nor personal abuse against any person. Any speaker that uses threatening language will not be permitted to continue. Public comment should not address any specific confidential student or personnel matter. Complaints concerning any specific employee or students are not permissible during public comment. Speakers must conclude their remarks at the end of their 3 minutes. And our first speaker this evening is Ms. Christina Clark. Welcome, Ms. Clark.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Felder, Chair Doyle, Vice Chair Stevens, and members of the board. I'm here tonight to address an urgent problem we face that will determine the future of public education in Orange County and across our state and country. The exodus of teachers, administrators, and school staff from our county and from education. This problem is real and present as I watch colleagues, people who had originally planned to make their career here in Orange County, leave to pursue other opportunities, either in surrounding districts or outside of public schools altogether. Yes, the teaching profession is challenging and some turnover is natural, but those who are leaving in this moment are veterans, professionals, and mentors who have had enough. Our organization, the Orange County Association of Educators, visited buildings and surveyed staff throughout the year, trying to determine how our district could improve conditions to keep staff here. Most of the people we talked to really want to stay. The top reasons educators gave for staying in Orange County were the students, the best students in the state, in my opinion, and our colleagues, who we've developed relationships and teams with over the years that produce some of the best teaching in the state. No scripted curriculum can replace the collaborative pedagogy and the relationships with students that professional educators foster. So how do we keep these relationships going? How do we keep the best and brightest here in Orange? Based on our survey results, we identified 3 pressing demands from educators. First and most obvious is pay. Who wouldn't be tempted by the supplements in surrounding counties? Who wouldn't be tempted by that new tech job that pays double what I make now? Paying teachers and classified staff a livable wage is one thing, but we can do better here in this prosperous county, which is why we propose raising our county supplement, reinstating master's pay, and increasing teaching assistant salaries to $25 an hour. Second, educators ask for protected time to eat lunch, plan instruction, and collaborate with our colleagues, time that doesn't get eaten up by administrative tasks. Third, and finally, educators ask to be listened to by leadership. It's time to reinstate a monthly superintendent's advisory council, and it's definitely time for us to see district staff visiting schools on a regular basis to listen to staff and students and build community. On our survey, one of the themes that kept coming up was educators feeling used and disrespected, and I don't mean by students. The tragedy is the way students react when yet another educator that's worked here for many years resigns. They ask me, "Ms. Clark, is this person leaving because of us?" "No," I say, "you're the reason we come back every day. Our kids can't wait any longer. They don't want substitutes and scripted curriculum. They want teachers and school staff that stay
Your 3
because they
minutes are
want
up
to be
now.
here." Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Our second speaker this evening is Ms. Gretchen Schmid.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. A great school board unites the community through policies that are not discriminatory and divisive, and by their own example, is a nonpartisan body to oversee a basic education. A great school board responds to parents' concerns by looking at material issues in an honest and nonpartisan light. A great school board protects children and youth from harmful media materials like kink.com in the library. A great school board supports schools to be transparent, making curriculum readily available for parents to look through across the district and across the grades. A great school board recognizes and supports excellent schools and excellent principals and not belittle them in public meetings. A great school board respects parents as the ultimate authority for their children. A great school board makes teachers and the teaching of a basic education their highest priority. A great school board allocates the funds provided by taxpayers be allocated on a basic education, not on a political agenda, not on training teachers to diagnose medical issues in children. And as was just mentioned, Orange County School District is the third highest funded district in the state. A great school board unites the community by their example and by their choices and by their words, not by making faces and snickering and taunting as they're voting to basically, in a very disrespectful way, push back the concerns of parents into their face. A great school board does not break the law by having meetings on subjects that are only to be in public meetings and closed meetings before the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schmid. Okay, that concludes our public comment. It is time for board comment. And I honestly just wanted to echo one of the recognitions tonight. I wanted to give a shout out to our Director of CTE and the Arts, Ms. Shannon Braxton, for her role in launching the Summer Career Academy, which is just an incredible opportunity that is collaborative, and it implements equity. And it's collaborative because it started with the leadership of our Chapel Hill Schools Chair, Deon Temney, and Chapel Hill Town Council leader, Ty Hune, and they were just determined to find a way to provide more opportunities for refugee and students who needed more opportunities to close gaps. And so I'm encouraging anyone in the 16 to 24-year-old age group in Orange County to apply now, and I'm just really excited about it. At our Cedar Ridge High School campus, we're contributing our woodworking classroom space and an instructor. And at Orange High School, we're contributing a construction classroom space and an instructor, and they don't have those spaces in their schools in Chapel Hill, Carborough City Schools. So it's really a joint effort of contributing strengths. And as was mentioned, this year is a construction theme, and we're hoping to take it into other areas. And I'm just really excited that we got to be a part of this and it's available for students. And I would like to pass to Vice Chair Stevens, and then if we can just go around for other board members' comments.
All right, thank you. Last week, I had the privilege of putting on my storytelling outfit, and I read to 3 classes, and I'd like to thank the middle school for the opportunity to dress up again, and it was a joy. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Brenda. Hillary?
Thank you. During this challenging year, I think that it's important to just always thank every staff member for their incredible dedication during these continued challenging times. Also, as we are poised to make our biggest step to lift mandates, I just want to ask families to have conversations with their students about respecting everyone's choice to mask or not to mask. Tensions have been really high, and this is an opportunity for all of us, adults and children, to model civility and respect for one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Bonnie? Jennifer?
Last week, I completed the Teacher and Social Emotional Learning Certificate through the University of Colorado Boulder. And I would also like to thank the collaborating partners, Chapel Hill, Carborough City Schools, Orange County Schools, for their hard work in launching the Summer Careers Academies for our students. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Will?
Just a few things. One, I also got the opportunity to do the storytelling, and it was very exciting. Kids were very engaged and appreciate all the help and allowing us to get into the schools to be able to participate. Also attended the Business Advisory Committee, and just wanted to echo about Ms. Braxton and all of her efforts. Definitely, it's exciting. The business community is excited about it as well. And also it was a meeting about educating on what CTE is. And overwhelming, the group felt like getting the community more knowledge about the programs was really key, and how wonderful it is, and just being able to get that out. The other item I'll just mention real quick is I did get to attend the district band concert. It was fabulous. Some of the kids there, they made an announcement and said who started off virtually. So, there was about a quarter of the kids who started learning an instrument virtually. And it's just amazing to see the progress and to see all the excitement and the parents, but wonderful concert, and I was very glad I was able to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah?
Yep. So since our last board comment, I attended, as did a number of you, the Budget and Student Achievement Committee meetings. I also attended the Climate Council meeting, as well as the unveiling of the belonging table, which we learned more about last time. That was a really beautiful event. I also got to read aloud at AL Standback. I want to thank Ms. Kenesha Smith for the invitation. That was fun. I read Sophia Valdez, Future Prez, which is a great book if you all haven't read it. And I also went to the Public School Forum's Eggs and Issues breakfast, and they had 2 deep dive topics, and one of them relates to this issue that one of the public commenters brought up. The title of the session was The Workforce Crisis in Education. And so this is obviously a statewide and national issue. It's huge, and just really underscored the need for us in Orange County schools to take proactive actions to support and retain our educators, as well as to really make sure that we're investing in the recruitment efforts as well on both sides. That's it for me.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everybody. Okay, it is time to adopt a revised consent agenda that we discussed in closed session. And I just want to mention that we have 6 items on our consent agenda. We have minutes from February 21st, which include the written public comment and the personnel report, the revised personnel report, a community use of facilities rental plan update for the spring fiscal year 2022 budget amendments, our CAPS, Orange County Certificate of Adequate Public Schools for this month, and purchasing equipment for health science CTE program. And I want to thank Mr. Stephen Tanner from Cedar Ridge High School, representing their Cedar CTE program, for joining us tonight. Are there any items that board members would like to move to the regular agenda for further discussion? And if not, do I have a motion to adopt tonight's consent agenda?
I move to adopt tonight's agenda.
Second.
A motion from Ms. Stevens, a second from Ms. Smiley. All in favor?
Aye.
Wow.
And that brings us to our first discussion action item, I believe, on COVID-19 health and safety updates. I'd like to welcome our special guest, Ms. Quintana Stewart, Public Health Director from Orange County Health Department, and I will pass back to Dr. Felder.
Thank you so much, Chair Doyle. And yes, indeed, we'd like to welcome Ms. Stewart, Director for the Orange County Health Department. Also joining us tonight will be Mr. Aberley, Deputy Superintendent of Operations, and perhaps other members of his team that he will introduce as needed.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Patrick Aberley, Deputy Superintendent of Operations. So we do have a couple folks in the room tonight. I want to recognize Sylvia Compton, our Director, lead school nurse for the district, and Dwayne Foster, who's our Director of Athletics, Operations, and School Health. And we're checking to see if Ms. Stewart's online. If she's not available at this time, Dr. Felder, you want me to go ahead with my presentation?
Yes. Do we know if she's available?
They do not see her at this time, so if it's okay with the
Yes,
board,
let's just move
I'll
ahead.
continue on and then we can come back. So it's not. All right, Mr. Miller, I'm not getting the slides to advance here. If you'll keep going until we get to my slides. So as we all know, several things have taken place since our last, keep going until we get to the 8. Okay, thanks. All right. A couple things have transpired since we were last together. One is the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services updated the Strong Schools Toolkit. I lost count with the number of updates since January 1st. I think it's about 7 at this point in time. But the latest revisions and updates came out last Friday late. So we will present and talk to you this evening about a couple of those updates because we do think one of those items may be time sensitive. But we've been monitoring and certainly responding to both community metrics, where we are as we mitigate and provide strategies in our schools, working with the ABC Science Collaborative, the Orange County Health Department, with the goal continuation of in-person learning for our students, keeping schools open to learning, and keeping our staff and our students healthy and safe throughout this school year. We started talking about, at the last meeting, reducing and minimizing and rolling back some of our mitigation strategies, as we're now in a better place with the pandemic than we were earlier in the year. We've come through a couple surges. First, the initial surge of the pandemic with the original strain of the virus, the Delta strain, and then the Omicron strain. And now we're seeing the results both of the community response with vaccinations and having that as a tool. Additionally, boosters that are now available, mitigation strategies that are in place, and certainly, as we talked about at the last meeting, there have been a number of cases of individuals who've had COVID. And so, we know that the widespreadness of it is not as great as it once was. So with the information and with the data, we continue to review every couple of weeks and bring you recommendations. Tonight, we wanted to talk about masking. As you know, the Orange County mask mandate was lifted. And so we said within 72 hours, we would talk about optional masking within the schools. So we wanted to present that plan for you this evening. We also wanted to look at the metrics at which we might need to remask again and how we're measuring and looking at that within the school setting. And then we also wanted to just provide brief updates with the toolkit as well. So the first thing we wanted to talk about was masking and looking at the options for masking. First and foremost, when there's a state law, an executive order at the state level, or a local mandate, we're required to follow those as a school district. And so we can be more restrictive than mandates, but we cannot be less restrictive. And what we talked about at the last meeting was with an indoor mask mandate in the county, we as a school district couldn't lift our mask mandate until the county lifted and the town lifted their mask mandates. So the first thing you see on the slide tonight is just a summary of whenever there's a mandate, whether that's at the state level or the local level, we would be required to follow that. And we would be required, if it does indicate indoor masking, then we would be returning to indoor masking. And one point of clarification is whenever we return or we would have indoor masking, we would mask as well on school buses, charter buses, or any public transportation that we're taking as part of a school-sponsored trip or activity. And then anytime this evening, certainly when we mention required masking, we'll continue to follow ADA mask accommodations and exemptions as we have throughout the pandemic. Item B was optional masking, and this is what we're asking this evening for the board to consider would be to lift the required mask mandate and having an optional mask mandate. And so masking would be optional indoors since there's not a local or state requirement for masking. And what we are utilizing would be a metric of monitoring in-school transmission of COVID cases. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into that as to what we mean by in-school transmission. But we know, as you've heard time and time again, there will be cases of COVID continually in the community. Individuals will have COVID. Individuals will return to work or return to school, may continue to be asymptomatic and not even know that they have COVID. So it's possible we continue to have cases. what we're looking at and our primary point for our metric will be, are we having cases that are originating within the school? So we have in-school transmission. And so what we would propose is we look at the school's population and we set a cap for in-school transmissions. We review those each week. If a school exceeds the number of in-school transmissions, then we would return to required masking for a minimum of 5 days to allow contact tracing and review of those cases. Again, if staff members or students are returning after a positive COVID test, right now, they are out for 5 days of isolation. And after they test positive and when they return, they're required to wear a mask indoors and outdoors for an additional 5 days. When we're talking about optional masking under this category, it does not apply to those individuals that are required by the health mandate at the state and locally to continue to wear a mask indoors and outdoors following a positive COVID test. So I just want to be very clear about that. This is about optional masking for other individuals that are not under a health mandate returning from a positive test to continue to mask. And then we do have certain category of students that have an ADA accommodation plan, a 504 plan, or a medical plan. And then part of that medical plan, because of the health conditions of the student, it may require them to mask. And in those cases, parents will obviously may want to request that we continue to ensure that medical plan is followed, which we have an obligation to do, and ask for their child to continue to mask. And in those cases, we will continue to honor, just like we honored the mask exemptions, those students who have a documented medical plan that requires masking. We will assist in helping the child to continue to wear that mask during the school day. And again, those are for students who would meet that criteria. So that's our optional masking. And we'll talk again more about the 2% cap that we're recommending. And then the third category is if a school exceeds that 2% cap. And again, we're looking every week. We're looking back 7 days to the number of cases in school transmission. Then we would require the school to mask for 5 days. And that would include both students and staff. It would include visitors to the campus. It would include bus drivers and students that ride buses going to that school. So the method that we're trying to convey is one, consistency, but two, simplicity. So that when we have an issue or concern, it's by campus and it's by building. And then we're able to communicate that so that the same process and procedure and expectation is the same, whether I'm a student, a staff member, a district office person, you visiting a school, or someone from the public coming into the school. If that week masking is required, then it would apply to everyone that's coming inside the school building. So those are our three categories for masking and the reasons and rationales for masking. A couple other notes to this. Last time we talked about staff vaccination rates. We're no longer recommending or using the staff vaccination rates as a metric for a couple of reasons. One, our staff vaccination rate, meeting the definition of fully vaccinated, having the initial series of shots, meets the current CDC guideline and state guideline. As part of the Strong Schools Toolkit update, we received an update from the state, and talking about that fully vaccinated does not include the booster. We know there was some discussion that the definition was going to be expanded and include a booster. That did not take place. There is no state requirement for the booster to be fully vaccinated. The Strong Schools Toolkit had indications based on individuals that were required to quarantine, and as the contact tracing and school nurses were looking at cases, That was part of the requirement, was to look to see if an individual had the booster. So there's two categories: individuals that are fully vaccinated, that have had the initial series, whether it's a 2-dose series, Pfizer and Moderna, and it's 14 days after that second dose, or 14 days after the initial dose of the Johnson & Johnson, you're considered fully vaccinated. Individuals are categorized as up to date if they've received the initial vaccinations and they've had a booster. We're still requiring individuals, as the board directed back in the fall, to be fully vaccinated, which does not include boosters. There are other federal guidelines that changed on February 25th, is no longer requiring masks to be worn on school buses for federal transportation. Again, like I said, if we have a masking situation inside buildings, then for consistency, we will mask on school buses, charter buses, and when using public transportation for other school-related activities. All right, so the next item we wanted to talk about was the 2% CAPS threshold for schools' secondary in-school transmission. Again, looking at the in-school transmission, you know we've been tracking several data points. Primary cases or initial cases on a school campus, secondary cases, students that are in quarantine, and then how many students are presumptive positive. And Sylvia, myself, others have been giving you regular updates about each of those categories. What we're looking at are secondary cases, those cases that it appears through the contact tracing process in collaboration with the health department, our school nurses, and the school health teams are identifying, and we'll show an example of that, cases that look like and appear one individual came into the setting, was positive for COVID, and then we had within a certain time period additional individuals that are now showing from presumptive positive to being positive, and that's where we would start to look at in-school transmissions. So this is a 2% cap. We look at the student attendance, the student enrollment at the schools, and we simply looked at 2% of the population at each school. And that would be the cap, the threshold we would set on a weekly basis as we look back. How many cases do we have or are we looking at? Through the height of Omicron, just to give you some comparisons, we only had a couple schools that would have triggered based on this, because we had quite a bit of presumptive positives, but we had fewer cases of in-school transmission. We're doing very well right now. Last week, for our entire school district on Sunday, we only had 6 cases in the last 7 days of connected in-school transmission in one school. And so, again, we're not looking to exceed these caps, but it's certainly possible. If we have several classrooms, because when we look at in-school transmission, we're going to be counting the entire campus. We could have several cases from a bus, or several cases from an athletic team, or several cases that result of an event or a place where students are gathering, and there's one case and there's other cases we start to track that we could hit the cap. We looked at 1%. We felt 1% was a little too low. That threshold would be triggered quite often. And we felt 3% was a little bit too high. What we're wanting to do is to continue to monitor, especially through April 10th. Our checkpoint is after spring break. Reduce and pull back mitigation strategies within the schools, normalize that experience. But we know we have to be very cautious as we lead up to spring break and as we come back from spring break. So we're not trying to remove all restrictions at this point in time, although we're going to move as quickly as we can and as safely as we can. We want to make sure we have a metric that we can monitor so we can stop and address any concerns and issues, so we don't get into a situation where we have to shut down schools or close schools or go back to remote learning because we weren't watching a metric like in-school transmission, and all of a sudden we have numerous amount of cases that are taking place across the school campus. So this is a measurement tool for us to continue to monitor. And we would propose each week, we're going to be monitoring this every Sunday at noon. We'll get our data from the previous 7 days. And then if we have to make a change, we would announce that by 6 p.m. that evening to the school or schools, letting parents know starting tomorrow at the bus stop or when you drop your child off to school, they would be required to have masking again for the next 5 days because we've exceeded our cap. There's one note to this. If you do approve this evening, and that's on Partnership Academy, I did put an asterisk next to it. When we ran the calculations, it came out to 1 because it's just such a low number of students in the population. We are recommending to modify that to a minimum of 3. So that way there is a little more of a buffer on that school campus, and it's not one constantly re-triggering, remasking in that location. All right, so the next slide, I'll ask Sylvia to join me here, and we've created a little visual graphic just to kind of walk you through what this in-school transmission and contact tracing might look like. Sylvia?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So the next slide talks about reaching that threshold of the 2%. So the slide previously showed you what 2% was, so we would be looking at 1 over that per school. It is very complicated how we need to look at that because according with Strong Schools CDC and our local health department, in order to connect cases, we're looking at a 14-day look back where the initial primary case may have exposed somebody else, and there's 14 days where they could have become symptomatic. With that said, we know that by the time we realize cases are connected, it may be 2 weeks after. The health department also uses a 28-day roll with after they look at the 14 days to determine if there are clusters. Clusters is anything that's 5 or more that are known or presumed to have had some close contact. So in other words, they were in the same room. They rode the same bus. So something we can connect that would say they were together. With that being the case, what we're going to do in the school setting so we can have these numbers on hand every Sunday, we obviously can't wait 2 weeks or 28 days. So what we're going to do, we're doing what we call cases that have been identified as secondary cases in the last 7 days. I talked with the health department today. What they're going to do, they're going to also assist us when we're looking at cases as they start increasing. We're going to give them the same information we've always given them. The individual's name, the schedule, teachers, groups, whatever they've done. And they're going to help us with that 7-day look back. That's more reasonable than waiting for 2 weeks because as we know, the Omicron variant is very quick. By the time it's identified, the contagious period has already come and gone, and which is why we're not quarantining anymore. So that's what we're going to use to look back. Any questions on that?
Okay, sorry, I do
Ms.
have,
Compton.
I'm
Go
so
ahead,
sorry, I
Sarah.
do have one question. When you say we're not quarantining anymore, can you just,
Absolutely. So with the new Strong School guidance, there's no more individual contact tracing recommended.
oh, right, okay.
And
Yes,
because of that, with an exposure, regardless of distancing, masking, or vaccination status, if you are not symptomatic, we are not asking you to stay home. The only people we're asking to stay home are those that test positive or become symptomatic.
great, okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just to add what Sylvia said, in this example, you see we started out with 1 primary case in yellow. The primary cases are not included in our secondary case counts because, again, that's an initial case within that setting or within that environment. And then also, when we look at siblings within the school environment, if we can trace back and know that siblings were exposed or connected within the household, then that won't count as a in-school transmission because we know the risk and the factors of being in the household are increased. All right, so next that brings us to just some, again, updates. What we propose to do would be, again, starting this week, we will continue to monitor. Like I said, there were no schools over the cap yesterday. We would start monitoring, again, reviewing, and then this Sunday, we get our data points in at noon. We would make any announcements by 6 p.m., and we would continue that through April 10th, which will bring us to our first board meeting in April. And we'll continue to review the thresholds. It may be the thresholds need to be adjusted one way up or down, or maybe even eliminated at that point in time. But like I said earlier, the goal is to have a metric and a standard to watch in-school transmissions, and especially through spring break. And then just a reminder again, required masking. If we do put a threshold cap in place, it would be required for a minimum of 5 days while we continue to investigate. Just a couple other items from the toolkit, and I know Ms. Stewart was going to talk to one of those, and that is the community levels and the changes to community levels. And because of those changes, it's one of the reasons we're no longer recommending we use a community metric in our standards. I know before I discussed and talked about, which was part of the recommendations when schools were in, or communities were in high transmission, having additional metrics in place. The toolkit or the CDC guidelines for county community transmission went from 4 categories: high, substantial, moderate, and low, to 3 categories, which is high, medium, and low. And not only did the categories change, but the thresholds within the categories change. It looks at 3 items. Now it's by cases. How many of those cases are over 200 for the look-back period of 7 days, or 200 or more? And then it's broken down by hospital admissions and staffed inpatient beds, which gets very complicated when we look at the admission rates and hospitalization rates, especially in Orange County, with a hospital system that is great and robust, but we also know it takes in patients from around the state. And so what we didn't want to do was have a metrics based on the new standards and the new guidelines with county designations that would cause trigger points in our schools for an issue that may not be an issue in the schools. It may be a hospital issue in the community and not a school issue. And so that's why we'll be tracking the in-school transmission rates. However, the Orange County Health Department, the community will certainly be using the community transmission rates with other factors from the state data collection website, and we would leave it to the health department to utilize that data and make any decisions based on community transmission and what that would mean for the schools if there's a mandate for the locality. And I think that brings us up to questions and comments. And again, the 3 items we're asking for your consideration this evening. One is the masking as presented in Table 1, which was item A, B, and C. The second item was in reference to the 2% caps. And then the third item is in reference to the superintendent having the ability and the authority to implement additional health and safety measures in consultation with the health director at individual campuses. We know the first step is remasking for a minimum of 5 days, but there may be situations where we need to limit, whether that's meal times or physical distancing or other measures on the campus. And we would just ask that the superintendent have that ability in that 5-day period, or while we're still monitoring and reviewing, to implement additional measures that are necessary that we've used during the pandemic that we know work. And then the last item, this is a new item. It was not in your original presentation, so I wanted to make sure I noted that was an addition today. We were waiting on the Strong Schools Toolkit to be released to provide additional guidance or information. And there's no longer any reference to requirements for bell covers or to where obviously the masking is optional now. But what is in the toolkit, it talks about individuals that are involved in singing, shouting, band, exercise. Schools may consider implementing screening testing for participants who are not up to date for vaccines, routinely test, and then certainly it recommends continuing outdoor activities as much as possible. We're continuing with our testing programs on the campus. We have had no clusters or major concerns with cases since we put implementations of additional restrictions within our band, music, and chorus classes. We've been very safe in our approach and very conservative in order to keep students safe because those activities were listed as high risk. And so we would continue to use physical distancing as much as possible and continuing to go outdoors. But we're recommending that we, with the update to the toolkit that was released Friday, we were going to bring this back on the 22nd to go ahead and remove the bell cover requirement and the additional time restrictions that were placed on students performing in music classes, band classes, etc. There are certainly benefits to allowing students. One of those is some competitions that are coming up. And as you've heard, some feedback around the bell covers and the use of bell covers. Once the masking is optional starting tomorrow, I really just felt like it was at a good place, seeing where we were with the toolkit and looking at our data, to not wait on this recommendation. So we've added that this evening, and I know I just wanted to give you time for discussion on that as well, because that was a new item.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abley. Dr. Felder?
I have no comments at this time.
And okay, are we thinking Ms. Stewart's not joining us?
Yeah, so we've not heard from her at this time. I know she's traveling.
Okay.
So that may be part of the reason.
Yes, ma'am. So to support our board norm of sharing the floor, I'll ask each member if they have questions or comments for taking multiple questions from any one board member. So Sarah, would you start us off?
Excellent, sure. And this is not so much a question as a comment about, I support all of these recommendations. The one concern that I have is around situations where there is a lot of community transmission. I won't call it high because the CDC did change those categories. I have no problem with not following the new categories because they measure things like hospitalizations, which is a very late in the game measure, right? But my concern is about situations where there is a lot of COVID in the community, there is a lot of COVID coming into schools, and we know that with optional masking, there will be more secondary transmission. And as far as I know, ABC still recommends that you consider community transmission as one factor in making this decision about masks optional or masks required. And so I preferred that the previous recommendations we voted for had a level of community transmission. At the time it was like high. It was when we go back above 100 cases per 100,000 in 7 days that we would put the masks back on. We know that without the masks, there will be more secondary transmission and there will be more kids out of school. And so if we had that community, if we considered also the level of community transmission, which we do still have from DHHS in their dashboard, right, daily. If we considered that, then we could get ahead of it faster than waiting to see all of the secondary transmission, and we could prevent some of that secondary transmission and keep kids in school. So that's sort of a comment. It's not really phrased as a question, but if you have any reactions, I welcome them.
The data, as you mentioned, is very difficult sometimes to track. I know Dr. Felder and I were in discussions very quickly when the new designations came out. And I was pulling up and looking at counties around the state who have some of the lowest vaccination rates. Orange County's done very well with our community and vaccination rates. And they were immediately in the medium category, and Orange County was still in high category. And so it concerns me with the new metrics, tying those into students putting masks on, taking masks off.
I definitely don't think we should do that. I do not think we should use the new metrics. What I'm saying is sort of a rate of community transmission used to be in the metrics, and now we have it through the state dashboard from DHHS.
So I will say with that, one thing we continue to track is the number of students that are presumptive positive. And we still are the number of primary cases, even though they might not lead to secondary transmission, we're still tracking the number of positive cases we have. The third thing is testing. We have, how many folks signed up for testing right now? So 632 families registered for testing. We're continuing to promote testing and staff members testing, because to your point, when there's high community transmission, there's going to be cases and asymptomatic cases, so testing is a great strategy. The other item that I know Sylvia will be discussing with the health department tomorrow is looking at more antigen testing, because if we can provide rapid antigen testing to the students and families, like today we had, or yesterday we had 101 elementary students presumptive positive last week. It would be great to know. Go ahead, work with those families, or if those families took them for testing or signed up for testing through the school, those rapid antigens would certainly help us in monitoring and ensuring. But yes, I certainly understand how we've used that metrics and how we've used thresholds. And so our shift is the health department will still be doing that. And at the point it's high, they will be implementing the mandate, not necessarily the schools as the trigger point. So we are in collaboration with the health department and again, communicating where we are with our secondary cases, and they communicate certainly with us any community transmission, such as high community transmission, and what we should be doing differently based on that.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense with what you're saying with the health
Can I
department.
just react very quickly? Okay, and my reaction to that, I'm glad that we're doing that with them. I just wonder if their threshold for a mask mandate in the community might be different than ours in a school setting where we have this shared interest in keeping kids in the classroom. So I think that might be worth discussing and sort of understanding a little bit more. My understanding was a lot of what drove their decisions is hospitalizations and stuff, which is much later in the game than what I'm recommending.
So we can certainly go back and revisit this with the Orange County Health Department and ABC Science Collaborative. But do know what is being recommended tonight is with their consultation and approval.
Bonnie?
Thank you for this. I'm supportive of the recommendations. I have a picky change I'd like to make. I think this is the first time that we've put an end date on a recommendation. So I was wondering if we could just make a slight wording change to say that the changes are effective March 8th, and then add a point that we will review them on April 11th. Because the way it reads now, it's like they'll end on April 11th, and I don't want to give the public that impression. So it's just a picky wording change.
Okay. Do you want to respond to that, Mr. Abele?
Yeah, no objection to that.
Okay. Other board members with questions? Will?
So I wanted to start off with just a comment, and I just wanted to thank Ms. Compton for all of her leadership and work that she's done, and researching and just continuously keeping us up to date on what's going on. And I know sometimes it's good to just say thank you. So thank you for all your leadership during this. I also wanted to say that I am in support of the recommendations, and thank you for taking the time to add in the removal of the bells and the chorus. So thank you.
Thanks, Will. Any other comments from board members?
Well, I'll just say that I certainly support your recommendation, and I further support your comment that you're not considering the community because there's so many people to go to our state hospital, and they're not a part of our community. So I absolutely support your recommendation, Mr. Aberle. Thank you.
I wanted to thank you, Mr. Abele and Ms. Compton. I'm sure working together, I thought the presentation of this was really helpful. Having you calculate on the front end what 2% secondary transmission would look like at each school is really helpful to parents. And again, those aren't number of cases coming in. That is only the ones identified as in-school transmission. I think that's super helpful. I just have one quick question. I feel like this was discussed in past weeks, but remind me, this applies pre-K through 12. And then there's the note that some pre-K, is it some pre-K programs that have additional federal and state requirements? I know we have different pre-K settings, so could you explain that to us again?
Yeah, thank you for, because I did not mention that. So in general, our pre-K programs, especially Head Start program or federal programs, have additional rules or different rules that they follow. And when we looked at the toolkit changes, they use the language K-12 schools. We know on our campuses, we take the health and safety of all of our students, pre-K through grade 12, very seriously. And unless there is a specific state or federal mandate, going forward, they would be following the recommendations or implementation of what you're voting on. It would be my clarification. Now, there are certainly regulations and clarifications that we would be mandated to follow. So if there are pre-K programs and there's state or federal mandates, we would be required to follow those.
Okay. Jason?
I just turn it off. I don't know if it works. I would just say, just to follow up on a point that Mr. Obley made earlier with regards to, that if there are state, local, or federal mandates in place, obviously those would have to be followed within the school system. With regards to the comment about Head Start, there was just last week, and Ms. Duvison might have shared this already with you, Head Start previously had a rule requiring face coverings in Head Start programs. They announced last week that they would no longer be enforcing that. So similar to the CDC's transportation order, where they haven't necessarily rescinded the order, they've just decided and announced that they won't enforce that particular portion with regards to school transportation. The same is true with regards to Head Start programs as well.
Great, thank you. And one more thing I was just going to say, just so people realize, with the date mentioned, April 10th, we have 3 weeks of school before spring break. So this gives us 3 weeks of optional masking, the Sunday check, secondary levels, one more week. We get to check 3 times. Maybe no schools will have exceeded their 2% cap, but or maybe certain schools will have to take, a 5-day period to wear their masks. And then April 10th brings us to coming back from spring break, and you wanted us to reevaluate those thresholds.
Yeah, absolutely. So we wanted to present after spring break, both our data metrics leading up to spring break, thresholds, cases, and then the week following. Because again, no matter how much I try, I'm still remembering the first week back after Christmas vacation, last holiday, and we had 350 cases that first week, with students coming back and being presumptive and et cetera. Not all positive cases, but the contact trace and the amount of reporting that was going on that first week back was tremendous. So we just want to be cautious and keep our eye on the situation as folks come back from spring break.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Any last minute comments or questions before we consider a motion to approve this recommendation?
Madam Chair?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
move for approval of this recommendation.
Thank you. A motion from Vice Chair Stevens.
He's got something to say.
Oh, sorry.
There would be, there were 2 alterations to
Yeah.
that. One was the date
Yes.
modification
Right.
and partnership being a threshold of 3 for the 2% cap. Thank you.
Correct, with those 2 alterations.
Second.
A motion from Ms. Stevens, a second from Mr. Atherton. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you. All right. And our second discussion and action item concerns Partnership Academy. Dr. Felder?
That would be correct, and we will continue with Mr. Abley.
Great.
All right, good evening again. So this evening, we wanted to start with discussion about Partnership Academy. I think we've actually have possibly tonight the principal of the Partnership Academy and AL Standback on standby in case you have any questions. The board has looked at providing additional opportunities for the partnership program the last couple of years. There has been discussion in reference to making sure that we have not only the space, but the programming necessary to serve those students in an equitable manner as we do students at each and every one of our schools. So there were a couple items that we wanted to bring up as key objectives in the process. One was making sure that there was a space available for the programming and the needs. The campus was originally started being built in 2006 with 4 classrooms. Then there was an addition to that campus that was completed, and we're now serving up to 40 students in that location. The second item was there's no multi-purpose room, there's no gymnasium, there is no cafeteria, there is no cafe, there is no place to serve food or to serve meals on that campus. They do it through the building, the hallway, the classrooms, eating outdoors at picnic tables. That was not a new item for COVID for this campus. They have been struggling to find places for students to eat. They do have an option to go to A.L. Standback Middle School, but there's certainly concerns in trying to travel across the parking lots, and I'll point that out when we see the site map. And then the third thing was looking at and making sure that any other needs on the campus are being addressed for programming or anything else that may be needed in the future. One item we looked at was we do have the Welcome Center on Corporate Drive. That property was purchased by the Board of Education several years ago with the intent, the front building being used for administrative office spaces. That phase 1 renovation was completed. The second building on that campus I'll refer to as the gym building or building 2. That has a gymnasium, that's the primary space, and there are several classrooms in there. So what the board had asked was looking at renovation and looking at relocating partnership from the existing site on Story Lane to the Welcome Center. And that was conversations you had previously through your capital process and looking at services and expansions within the district as to utilizing space. And so the first thing we did was provide a space profile looking at the 2 campuses. The differences, and I know that's small print there, but it is online that you can read. Looking at the campuses, the current existing site has 6 primary classrooms, totals about 2,635 square feet. The Welcome Center Gymnasium building has 7 what's designated classroom spaces, has a gymnasium of 6,400 square feet, but total classroom square footage is about 4,100 square feet. So we gained 1 classroom and just a little bit of another area with if we look at the renovation or look at relocating partnership to the Welcome Center. So this is an aerial map of the Welcome Center, top left corner, looking at the map, the white roof line there. That's the gymnasium building, 2 floors. There is an elevator services for ADA access within the building, and it has opposite wall corridor and stairwell access to the 2nd floor. Because the back of that building, really, if you took that building and divided it in half, the top half you're looking at really is the gymnasium, goes all the way to the roof line. So the classrooms are located bottom floor, 2 classrooms, top floor, 4 classrooms in front of the gymnasium. So it looks, when I say a 2-story building, it looks bigger than what it is because of the gymnasium. There is a tremendous amount of site drainage issues between that building and what I've marked as a green item on that diagram. There's a slope. There's actually 3 bioretention ponds and basins that are located on that campus that are required for impervious surface and runoff and drainage. And so we really can't connect the space or build because of the slope and because of the existing stormwater management plan on that campus. We do have the area to the right. There is a soccer field that is located there, and right where that building's located, there's a concrete pad, used to be an old playground area there as the campus steps up with slope. We are limited on parking in this location. Aside from the major drainage issues, there's HVAC, inside renovations. The same work that went into the front building that would need to happen in this building as well, preparing it and certifying it to house students and to be activated as a school site or school location. We still have the same issues I talked about earlier, which is we don't have a cafe or a cafeteria or a place to serve students. We do lose some administrative office space, which is in the current location. I've given you one of the attachments, the actual site plan. So you can see aside from classrooms, we still need spaces for reception. The school nurse currently, Sylvia's office is at the partnership. And so there's administrative support because she provides support. We don't provide an additional school nurse. She covers, aside from her duties, the school as well. So she's located there. The office admin staff, counselor, reception area, we would need a space for all of that. And then making sure that we have that additional space in order to serve the students with cafe and some other area with an administrative extension. And then certainly we would have other space if available. One of the limitations to this site is you may not realize when we purchase this property, there is an HOA for the corporate drive facilities. And so anytime we talk about outside exterior expansions, renovations, we would need to make sure not only are we meeting county and town zoning and ordinances, but also HOA requirements. So that's a little bit about the Welcome Center and that existing plan. And again, tonight is about discussing with you the options. This is the option, not the green building, because that would be a new building that I would propose in order to get the additional space we need on that site. But the existing building, renovating and moving partnership, that's a discussion you've had previously. What I'm presenting this evening tonight is additional concepts for us to explore and move forward, but certainly wanted to get the board's feedback before we did the in-depth site assessments and cost analysis. So this is the existing site. If we look at A.L. Stanback Middle School would be to the bottom, the south of your screen, the bottom of your screen. It's not showing in the site there, but you are seeing their front parking lot. Left-hand side, again, the white building with the roof line. That is the existing Partnership Academy. I mentioned 2 renovations. That was the front and the back of that building. It's connected together. What we would look at is what I propose, item A would be a new multi-purpose cafeteria, cafe, additional classroom area right on the driveway that goes to our administrative annex building on that site. We have room to expand that. That drawing's obviously not to scale. It would be to what the programming needs are. And then we would propose either outdoor learning space or common area courtyard that would connect the 2 buildings. For safety, we would want some type of connection between the 2 locations. And then students wouldn't be getting wet in the elements or the weather going between, but it could provide outdoor extension of outdoor learning connections and walkway over to that building. And then a new driveway that's listed as B and C. Coming in the blue line, we would connect to the existing driveway at A.L. Stanback Middle School. Turn left, you would have parking lot B, parking lot C for the new building and expansion, and then that would continue over to Partnership, which would give us our egress and our ability. We would still maintain and utilize the small building as the annex. We're currently in the process of moving our TIMS department, our transportation systems, those individuals who run all of our bus routes and our bus schedules to that location because they're in as part of your other discussions, in a mobile unit that's no longer serviceable to their needs or their use. And so we're relocating them to that location. But in the future with this site plan, by having the new driveway, having a there, the B and C parking lot areas, if the district wanted to do a phase 2 in future years, there would be space, and we would be able to design and plan a meeting hall, a multi-purpose facility or meeting room, much like you're sitting in this evening, that would allow us the space and the ability to provide professional development, provide a place for individuals at the schools or the individuals at the district to utilize. We have a tremendous issue trying to rent space or find space for district meetings, events, or other activities within the school district. And it would give us a space that we would have the ability to put technology in, resources, support, and the individuals would have a place to go to provide sustainable professional development. So looking at the campus, that's the main concept with utilizing this space at the existing site and expanding and renovating there. There is one additional benefit to building A on that site is A.L. Stanback Middle School currently has one gymnasium that they run all of their sports programs, both boys and girls. And in the winter months, when they're not only doing wrestling, they're doing varsity and junior varsity basketball, boys and girls. They are very stacked as far as practices and the times that they have to start and have to finish every single day on their campus. Back in, I want to say it was 2017 or 18, we renovated the multi-purpose room at Gravelly Hill Middle School, and we added padding to the walls to give them an additional space in order to do wrestling so that they weren't having the issue of trying to do wrestling and all the winter sports programs in the gymnasium every day. And the board, many years ago, the board at that time approved an expansion to the gymnasium at Orange Middle School, which allowed them a space for wrestling, and then we renovated a new indoor space to give them an additional room for expansion. So A.L. Stanback doesn't have that space. The other two middle schools have had those spaces renovated over the years, and so this would give us another building when it's not being used for partnership in the evening that A.L. Stanback could use for overflow and expansion of some of their practices. It would not be, we're not recommending a regulation size facility. It would be, as far as standards, probably even smaller than an auxiliary gym. So we wouldn't be looking to do competitions in there, but certainly for multi-purpose, for overflow, for additional space for events or meetings, or the use of the Partnership Academy, both in the daytime and night, it would serve those purposes. And I know both principals are there, so I'm not sure if you have any comments for me or for them, but that's the concept that we wanted to present this evening. And Mr. Nick Mincy, our Director of Facilities, is here as well.
Does I can see Mr. Farrington. I can't tell if that's Mr. Rockland. I can't.
It is.
Okay. Do either of you have comments that you'd like to share before the board has questions or comments? Okay.
Yeah, I would just add one thing. I think Mr. Obley mentioned additional classrooms, but I also wanted to mention the possibility of a proper health room for unwell students in that space also, because we currently don't have that at Partnership officially either. So just wanted to throw that out there to sort of plant that seed. Okay, questions?
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Rockland? No. Okay, great.
I'm good.
Okay, so board members, and just one thing I want to make sure. So you're asking for us to approve pursuing, because we have to do more, there's more commitment involved to really explore one. So you would like us to settle on one, and you're recommending staying at the partnership site. I just want to make sure.
That's exactly correct.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so to that end, board members with questions. Hillary?
So thank you for this presentation, and thank you to Mr. Farrington and Dr. Rockland for being here with us tonight. I have sort of a lot of comments and questions, and they're sort of in three different categories. So I have some comments around the plan to stay at Partnership Academy. I have some comments around sort of the full campus plan between AL Standback and Partnership because they sort of share a campus, and then some questions about the Welcome Center. So first of all, I think that it's exciting to see this, and I support the plan of adding on to the current campus. I think that it's exciting to think that Standback could use that space for some of their sports, basketball, wrestling, when Partnership isn't using it. So I like this plan a lot. One question I have around, this is kind of moving into the full campus feedback and questions. At one point, what's marked as D on this map, which I guess is the old school community relations, and now we're moving Tim's there. At some point, we talked about turning that into a softball field, and I'm just wondering if that's on the table, if there's somewhere else that could possibly go. I know that was something I've heard at some point, so I'm just wondering if that fits in.
So I've heard that, but I've not seen plans or a project that was discussed as far as that location. There was previous discussion. I don't know if Nick.
There's never been an actual
recommendation
package prepared by an architect or a designer to move forward with that. It's always been a concept, is the knowledge I have.
So I guess that sort of ties into like, is it possible that there's another location on that campus where that could be actualized? Because I know that it's a need. Okay. And so I guess that's feeding into my comments about the Welcome Center, which is, could that building that we've discussed as Partnership be turned into a potential boardroom, additional central services room, and then we can really focus on, my concerns also stem from, we have seen this year that it has been disruptive to have board meetings on campuses. And so I would like to avoid that if at all possible. And so I'm just thinking, in planning, does it make more sense to use that space as a baseball field if we have this other building that we don't have a plan for yet, which, I'm not qualified to say if it's possible that would meet a board meeting facility, but
so
just throwing things out there.
So with the building at 6,000 square feet, I mean, we would be limited on the number of individuals, certainly more than King Street. Parking will be an issue at the existing site at the Welcome Center. With board meetings in the evening, that's a little bit easier because obviously we don't have staff parking as we do during the day with daytime meetings at that location. But certainly we could. I remember a couple years ago, just when this discussion started about that gym building, about not converting it or taking that away because of the community use. But to your point, the building could be converted to other uses.
Well, if we were building courts somewhere else, I guess it's possible that if the community, I don't know how often it is rented or used, but it seems like renting out a basketball court in a 6,000 square foot building, we might be able to utilize that a little more efficiently for our district. But there's so many layers and considerations in all of this, but that's just something I was wondering. So I'll turn it to other board members, and I may have some more comments, but.
Okay. Thank you, Hillary. Other board members? Sarah?
I want to thank you for thinking about both locations. I support this plan to move forward and do the investigation about the current site. I'll ask my first question and then pass it in case others have questions. One is, you said it would be like a smaller than regulation size gym, and I guess I'm kind of curious why, it seems like there would be value for some high school students to be able to run up and down like a proper basketball court there, as in the site on Corporate Drive.
So my comment was just limited to size, space, and scope. We certainly have the ability to expand and make that regulation What I always try to do is identify that going into a project. Because when folks hear there's a gym or a multi-purpose room, and then they try to make that regulation or add bleachers or people and events, and it doesn't meet the need, it's difficult later on. What I was hearing was more of a multi-purpose, but classrooms as a need as well. But certainly on this site, we would have the ability to do both. To your point, that could be a possibility to look as an alternative would be to build a larger, full regulation-sized gym.
And I know that cost,
Or
I'm sure
auxiliary
that's
gym.
much more expensive. I think it would be
Yeah.
great to, talk to the schools and Mr. Farrington's team to get their sense of that.
Okay. Other board members, Will?
So, I'm passionate about this. We've been talking about it a while, and I agree with Sarah that, I personally would like to see a full-size gym for our students to be able to utilize, especially, whether it's sports or just being able to walk around the gym when it's raining or cold. So I'd like us to consider as well a covered path. I know that these are not actual drawings or anything, but one of the key things was whenever I visited partnership was just realizing that they didn't have a place to go except outside, right? It was really inside a classroom or outside. This would give them that option to walk around, take a break, and definitely would like to see some ability for them to have a covered area to get there. And I think sharing with Stand Back makes a lot of sense, because when I went to the district band, definitely parking was an issue, and being able to have a safer place for people to park when we have those kind of events. And also I think about the sensory area that's being built out for the outside area. I mean, that would help with parking as well. So definitely I'm in support of moving forward and, trying to find out what the cost would be around it to get a new space.
I just want to make a quick comment. We enjoyed, a number of us, getting to meet with your students, Mr. Farrington, at a forum that we had in December, and they were just such great conversationalists and talking about problems and solutions. And that was when I realized that they just didn't have the full meal selection that other high schools have. And I'm really excited about them having this cafe space and just having that be like a pleasure for them. And I'm curious if there is going to be the opportunity for student input on design and shaping outdoor spaces, so that they don't lose something they might love about the outdoor spaces. Is that a possibility that could happen there?
So I, from a district perspective, we always try to make sure we've got stakeholder input at the school level. And I think that's excellent. I know, our renovation projects that took place on a couple of our school campuses with media center upgrades, certainly included making sure the school was involved. And I think, to your point, at this level, student involvement would be very special as well to include as part of the process. And I'm not sure if the principals have additional input.
I definitely would love the opportunity to get the kids' feedback. I certainly want to give mine and weigh heavily on how we do what we do. I'll tell you that much. I want to be in every component, every single step of this thing. And our kids have a lot to say and a lot of really innovative ideas too. So we certainly want to include that in the mix. And I think Mr. Obley has no problem with that. We'll make it happen.
Okay, great. Sarah, do you have other questions?
I just had two clarifying questions. One, You mentioned professional development space, and I had just missed which location you were thinking about that as a possibility. And then if you have any alternatives in mind for the corporate drive location, since that building is
Well,
sitting
that, to Ms. McKenzie's point, the professional development space will be like a phase 2. I think phase 1 is we have to address the need for partnership.
Yeah.
And so phase 1 would be the connecting driveway, the new multipurpose building, gym, additional classroom spaces, the connectivity on the campus, food services, et cetera. Then phase 2 would be this additional building or whatever would be built there, if it's a softball field or whatever else we've discussed. The professional development can take place where in a location we designate, whether we continue to take the gymnasium and convert it. Because right now in the gymnasium, we do rent it on a periodic basis. We've had a contract in place pre-pandemic, and we have tried to utilize that space as well. But it is difficult every day resetting up, taking down for basketball programs, et cetera, and reestablishing everything like you see around you tonight for a meeting that's continuing tomorrow. And so having a dedicated space where we have the types of furniture, the technology, the equipment, and everything in one location helps us provide those services better from an operations standpoint. But for the user's experience coming in, they have connectivity. There's certain limitations in a gymnasium when you start with Wi-Fi or other things. We can't put TVs on the walls because basketballs or things will damage them. And so, having a dedicated space that certainly could be converted to a space that gets us where we're looking to go. And that's really what we were trying to do. We know there was an immediate need to address the partnership, but what we were trying to do was to think about what's the needs 3-5 years from now and build a capital plan that gets us there.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hillary?
So this conversation has been really helpful to me. I just as my I'm super supportive of this. I do hope Mr. Farrington and other staff members and maybe students can be involved. Hope Dr. Rockwood can be involved. While we have crews over there and we're doing planning, I would, as my final plug, like to just say if we can explore that softball field, maybe athletic field lights. Is my understanding that Standback is the only secondary school that doesn't have lights on the athletic fields. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I just think that this is a great opportunity while we have crews out there and we're planning to sort of think about the whole campus. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. So I think that, Dr. Felder, I think you're wanting the board to vote to support pursuing, how would you describe more information in the phase 1? Are we talking about like professional plans, or what exactly do you need approval to go ahead with?
So tonight's presentation was a concept, and so we want approval to move forward in terms of being able to get additional information to bring back to the board for further consideration with regards to the proposed plan.
What's the timeline for this?
So, first thing is the site assessment. That's going to be the critical point that's going to allow us to know the scope and the depth of what we can do in that location. And so typically those are not as detailed as building a new school or facility from scratch because we have existing campus, probably 3 to 4 month timeframe.
Okay. And if I could just also comment on your comment, Mr. Atherton, with regards to providing a shelter. Absolutely, yes. Having purchased umbrellas for the students, and Mrs. Farrington can attest to that, in order for them to travel just across the road, it would make absolutely no sense to stand up a structure and not have covering. So just know that that would definitely be part of the plan. Yeah.
And even though, AL Standback is nearby, it is it's a good stretch between the two buildings, not having appropriate sidewalks or connectivity for walking back and forth. And we have tried different plans and different methods to get the food from AL standback to partnership, and it's just not the level of service that we'd like to provide. And
It's
so
time.
having it on
It's just
site
time.
is a goal that needs to be addressed.
Great. Is there a motion to move forward in getting additional information, including site assessments?
So moved.
Second?
A motion from Mr. Atherton, and I think a second from Ms. McKenzie? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Ablay and Mr. Mintzy, and Mr. Farrington and Dr. Rockland. We really appreciate you.
Madam Chair, I just had, I'm sorry, I had one other just comment on the plan. I hope as the plan gets developed, we maybe in closed session talk about the safety protocols around that, especially as we're having an extension. I know we have other schools that, you know, moving from one area to another, how do we ensure the safety and the flow, you know, not just with a covering, but those things. So when it comes back, would love to make sure we have that in closed session on the,
Thank you. We will.
thank you.
Thank you. And I'll pass back to you, Dr. Felder.
Okay, so as Dr. Dawson makes her way up, we'd just like to say that and remind everyone that our new strategic plan has four goals. And tonight we are going to provide an update on the four key strategies related to Goal 1, which is teaching tomorrow's leaders, which is all about preparing students for college, career, and civic engagement. So at the March 21st meeting, we will share data related to Goal 1, Key Strategy 1. But at this time, we're going to focus on all four of the key strategies related to Goal 1, with the exception of the data. Again, we'll come back on March 21st and share that. So at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Dr. Dawson, and she will introduce members of the curriculum instruction team who will be presenting with her. Dr. Dawson.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Felder. Good evening, Chair Doyle, Vice Chair Stevens, Superintendent Felder, board members, and the community. As the district started our work with the strategic plan, various departments were assigned as leads of a goal as it relates to the focus of the work. With that said, with a heavy emphasis on MTSS and academic achievement for Goal 1, the C&I department took the lead of the strategic plan Goal 1. And we have a couple representatives of the curriculum and instruction team with us tonight to provide an update on the status of key strategies for Goal 1. And as a reminder, the district has created a graphic representation or framework to demonstrate how we will work. And this is how we will do this. When everything we do is rooted in equity to ensure all students receive what they need to succeed. And when we do so by focusing on these four goals, the goals of our strategic plan. Goal 1, teaching tomorrow's leaders. Goal 2, excellence and efficiency. Goal 3, empowering culture. Goal 4, family and community engagement. And when we start with core instruction that includes culturally relevant and responsive teaching of research-based curriculum that allows for authentic engagement between students and teachers. And when through data analysis, teachers are able to personalize or differentiate the supports for our students who may need more enrichment or remediation through tiered intervention and instruction. And when teaching and learning is mindful of the social and emotional learning of our students and staff in order to develop the whole child and or person, then and only then will we start to recover the learning and accelerate the growth for every child. And as a reminder, our goal, teaching tomorrow's leaders, as you can see, there are several components of our goals. There's the strategic plan goal, which states that for teaching tomorrow's leaders, we will do so through a multi-tiered system of support otherwise known as MTSS, all learners will excel by having access to and benefiting from rigorous curriculum and instruction that is research and evidence-based to prepare them for college, career, and civic engagement. And connected to our commitment to equity, we have identified an equity emphasis for each goal. And here, it is for us to identify and address inequities in curriculum and instruction in order to close the achievement, access, and opportunity gaps. And as you will notice, each of our strategic plan goals are also aligned with our OCS equity plan goals as well, because we're looking for the coherent alignment between our strategic plan and our equity plan. And to ensure that we accomplish each of the goals, there are key strategies for each goal, and for each key strategy, district teams have developed action plans and continuing to develop action plans that outline the scope of our work as it relates to the strategic plan goals. And tonight, we will provide a high-level overview on the status of each key strategy for Goal 1. Please note this is a 5-year plan and a continuous improvement plan, meaning that the key strategies will be completed throughout these 5 years and adjustments made in the process as we stop to reflect on the progress, analyze the data, and adjust our practice accordingly. And often you will hear this process as the plan, do, study, act model of continuous improvement. So without any further ado, here is key strategy 1. OCS will develop, implement, monitor, and continuously improve a deployment plan for multi-tiered systems of support to provide all students access to rigorous and differentiated core instruction to increase academic growth for all students. And to provide us a status update, here is Ms. Emily Myers, our Director of MTSS.
Thank you, Dr. Dawson. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to share information tonight regarding this important work. Connected to our triangle portion of the recovery plan framework that was shared by Dr. Dawson, MTSS is a continuous school improvement model that is comprised of 6 critical components. Most of you are probably familiar with component 5, 3-tiered instruction and intervention. It's the triangle you're very used to seeing. Although this element is essential in a fully functioning MTSS, it is equally as important as the other 5 components: leadership, building capacity and infrastructure for implementation, communication and collaboration, database problem solving, and data evaluation. To assess the implementation of MTSS at the school level, which is organized by critical components that we just spoke about, schools completed the FAMS, which is a self-assessment of MTSS implementation. That data is used to determine school improvement areas of strength and opportunities for growth, which are aligned with school improvement goals. Additionally, that FAMS data is reviewed to determine what supports are needed across the district by grade span and specific to critical components. Along with FAMS data compiled from individual schools, the district team also completed the district self-assessment of MTSS implementation entitled the FAM-D. The data gathered from this assessment administration, along with our FAMS data, has been used to determine the next steps for this work at the district level. We have not only a responsibility for supporting schools in their MTSS implementation, but also in ensuring that practices and infrastructure are in place at the district level so that our MTSS framework can be fully implemented. Here you will see a broad 7-step initial implementation plan for district-level MTSS work through the start of the 22-23 school year. From February to August, our district will be focusing on all 6 critical components of MTSS, with a heavy emphasis on building the capacity and infrastructure for implementation, including necessary professional learning opportunities, collaborative efforts with the Departments of Student Services, Testing and Accountability, Schools and Achievement, Technology, community engagement, and school administration will ensure that we are well prepared for an effective and efficient relaunch of MTSS installation and implementation in this upcoming school year. To provide a status update on Key Strategy 2, I now introduce Ms. Amber Wilson, Executive Director of Literacy. Ms. Wilson? All right, thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Emily, for that introduction. So Key Strategy 2 of Goal 1, OCS will develop, implement, monitor, and continuously improve a plan to ensure that all students can read on grade level at every grade. And as part of this plan, OCS joined the state initiative on the science of reading, and we are part of the second cohort in letters training, which began on January the 20th. As previously presented to you all at an earlier board meeting, Letters is a 2-year training providing teachers and administrators professional development on in-depth instruction in the systems of language, the psychology of reading development, and instructional practices that are best supported by research. Here you have some data from our Letters dashboard, which is super fun to look at. I know that sounds kind of nerdy to say that though, but I do get really excited about it. Do what?
You said you get excited. I thought it was good.
I do get excited about letters. So our district is working really hard to engage in learning opportunities with letters. We are hearing great feedback from our teachers. It is so rewarding to be out and about in the schools and have a teacher share an aha moment that they had from their learning in letters and their coursework. A couple of our coaches have also shared how teachers are asking questions in PLCs and applying knowledge from letters and conversations about problem solving for students. Just a reminder that we have all K-5 teachers, all elementary school EC resource teachers, all elementary school ESL teachers, all elementary school and middle school literacy coaches, all reading interventionists in our elementary schools, and all of our elementary school and middle school principals, as well as elementary school assistant principals and district facilitators enrolled in this teacher's course for letters. Here in Orange County Schools, we are doubling down on this professional development, and it will yield results for us. So thank you for that support. The data shown here on this slide reflects the teachers of Orange County Schools, facilitators, but it does not include administrators and district staff. We also have our Orange County pre-K data listed here for you, and that includes Head Start that are located within our schools. And we also have district facilitators that are participating in the early childhood course. The lead teachers for community-based pre-K sites that received NC pre-K funding are also participating and enrolled in the course in the exact same classes as our teachers. So not only are we building the knowledge around this coursework, we're also establishing connections with our community pre-K who ultimately have Orange County School students in their seats. In the data listed for pre-K, that does not include the community partnership organizations, staff, and teachers. That is just the Orange County staff data reflected there. All right. In an effort to support literacy across the content, we've also implemented Think Circa this year in grades 6 through 12. Circa stands for claim, evidence, reasoning, counter-argument, and audience. This is a framework that is utilized to help students develop critical thinking skills and walking students through the process of analyzing and synthesizing information across multiple sources to build argumentative, informational, and narrative writings. Our secondary teachers have participated in 2 professional learning days that were offered. In addition to that, our ESL teachers AIG teachers and EC teachers participated as well to ensure cohesiveness in co-teaching and planning for instruction. We are working with schools to build a better understanding of how they plan to incorporate the Circa framework into their instruction throughout this school year. And we also hope to continue to develop additional professional development opportunities that will strengthen our teachers and administrators' understanding of the Circa components and processes that can maximize student learning. Here on this slide, you have some data from Think Circa implementation. It's really hard to kind of see, so I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights so you have the overview there. So here you can see a few different data points that may be of interest. So far, we have about 2,079 assignments that have been submitted this year. 1.23 is the average number of assignments submitted per student, and 0.51 is the average number of assignments currently in progress by our students. If we look at the donut there in the top left, you can see that about 62% of the assignments so far have been writing lessons, 22% skills lessons, 12% direct instruction, and about 4% have been custom writing opportunities. Looking at the by school graph, which is to the right of the donut, we can notice that Gravelly Hill Middle School has had the most usage with almost 2 assignments per student. And the majority of those have been writing lessons. The next highest school is A.L. Stanback with almost 1.5 assignments per student. They have had a good mix of writing assignments, direct instruction, and skills lessons. I do want to note here that our high schools were implementing with second semester changeover after they received the professional development. So their schedule with the snow days and then the exams kind of going on for what seemed like forever have impacted their progress with implementation, but there are plans in place to help get them on track. So you may be asking yourself, why is this so important? Because research has shown for students completing a minimum of 7 to 10 writing units can more than double their growth in ELA over the 3-year period compared to those who did not participate in Circa units. So here in Orange County Schools, we're looking for ways to rapidly catch up our students, and Circa has proven to be one of those. So to provide the next status update on Key Strategy 3, I'm going to pass it to Dr. Dawson.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Now, as we move on to Key Strategy 3, where OCS will reduce opportunity and achievement gaps by ensuring equity in curricula, instruction, environment, and culture. Also, this strategy is very much connected to Goal 1 of the OCS Equity Plan, which states that we will identify and eliminate academic disparities and inequities in access to and success in programs and opportunities. So as you may recall, earlier this fall, we had Equal Opportunity Schools come and present to you. And they presented at the start of the school year an initial gap analysis of our advanced course enrollment data. And this analysis found that there is a lack of enrollment in advanced courses by our students of underrepresented groups, including our students of lower socioeconomic background. And to address these inequities, OCS partnered with EOS, Equal Opportunity Schools, to address the barriers that are resulting in these inequities and to provide the supports necessary for school teams at our 2 large comprehensive high schools to remove these barriers. The focus is not only to increase enrollment, but also to increase student success in the advanced courses such as AP, IB, and college courses through our dual enrollment. And here we have a description of some of the steps that the team at Cedar Ridge took to outreach to our underrepresented students. The team at Cedar Ridge, they have sent out nomination letters to over 50 underrepresented students and their families. They have conducted one-to-one meetings with the underrepresented students to review their graduation requirements and the benefits of taking advanced courses. They also have students that are already enrolled in advanced courses, sharing their experiences with their peers to encourage them and let them know why they would want to enroll as well. And staff, as we know, relationships are the most important when it comes to our students and their teachers, and staff are reaching out and supporting students with the process, the why, and encouraging them to enroll in advanced courses. While both schools are conducting similar processes, they may go about it in different ways. And so here tonight, we just wanted to share how Cedar Ridge, what they're doing in words, but here we had a couple pictures from Orange High School that shows that they did similar, took similar steps as well. And what they did here, they had a luncheon for the students who were invited, and they were given a presentation that helped to explain the importance and the benefits of enrolling in advanced courses, and then the importance of their GPA in this process. Students had an opportunity to engage with each other and their teachers about the benefits of enrolling in advanced courses and what it requires. And it was the work of the equity team and the advanced placement teachers that really took this on, and together they are identifying what they see as the barriers. But what was really interesting about what Equal Opportunity School does at both schools, and this was a survey that the students took a while back, and what we were able to find out about the students from those surveys is the adults in the schools that they connect with, the reasons why they may not be interested in advanced courses or why they have never taken an advanced course, to really understand why from our students' perspective, so that when adults are reading this, they have information on the individual students to continue to strengthen that relationship, to really encourage students that they are and they can and they will and that they should give themselves a chance in advanced courses. But it also starts with our believing in the students. So I'm very proud to say that our staff at both Cedar Ridge High School and Orange High School have really taken this charge and really taken the steps necessary to push our students and to believe in them, that our students are capable of much more. And in the future, we hope to present more outcomes of this outreach and share with you what these efforts have resulted in as far as the number of students and increased enrollment, and then of course their success of being in these classes. And so as we round to our final key strategy, number 4, we are going to reduce the number of students retained in 9th grade. As we know, the research says that when students are retained in 9th grade, their chances of graduating decreases. And to ensure that students have the proper skills to be successful, the middle and high school teams are working with the support of Dr. Gammon and our Mr. McEwen, working with the school teams at the middle and high schools to really take a look at the fidelity of implementation of the AVID program to ensure that our students have the skills that they need to be successful. And then the high schools are working with their 9th grade students to keep them on track by offering additional support, tutoring, and credit recovery opportunities to prevent them from having to be retained in 9th grade. And before we move on, we wanted to just highlight another goal, because as we started this presentation saying how aligned the strategic plan and the equity plan is, we just wanted to bring light of goal 3 of the equity plan, which is to build the equity leadership capacity of district leaders, administrators, teachers, staff, and the OS school board by developing equity-oriented leadership skills, mindsets, and knowledge, and to create a culture of equity and equitable access to opportunities for all students. It starts with us, the adults. And in building this equity leadership capacity of the adult leaders of the district, we took time to understand why our focus on equity is so important. So during our leadership meeting, starting, I want to say in December, we stopped for a moment to understand our historical context. Where did all this begin? And we worked with the Innovation Project and Ann McCall, who came to present to us her constitutional tales of North Carolina's constitutions and the system of free public schools. And we learned about the history of our state constitution, and the inequities are deep-rooted and have been a part of the government for many years. We then focused on our own local history and learned about the history of our very own Cedar Grove Community Center, which was our first elementary school for our African-American students here in Orange County. Then we took time to learn about the Jeans Teachers Project, learning about the courage, the understanding, and genius it will take to provide an equitable education to all our students. And our Jeans teachers, who were a group of predominantly Black female educators, worked as master teachers, and they proved to us that regardless of the barriers and the obstacles, when we think differently and do differently and go above and beyond, we can reach equity and we can educate all students and give them the access to the opportunities they deserve. And so we must know where we've been to know why we are where we are now in order to determine where we must go. And so we've taken the time to ensure that we as district leaders understand the historical context as we move forward in determining how it is that we need to go to ensure equity and excellence in education for all our students. So tonight we've shared with you a high-level overview and an update of Goal 1 from our strategic plan. And it might sound like all, roses, but it's not. While we've had a number of successes, this is not without its challenges. We know that we're trying to implement new programs and resources during a stressful time in education like no other that we've experienced in our lifetime. We are facing staffing shortages, and our teachers and our staff are going above and beyond to do everything they can to ensure that our students are safe, that they're still being educated in spite of all of the shortages in staff. And when you have supports that we put in this year, such as instructional coaches, right now they're not able to be coaches. They're not able to provide the teachers the level of coaching that our teachers deserve because they're helping to cover classes. Our teachers don't have the time to plan and do the necessary collaboration they need to look at the student work and to determine what adjustments in the practice they need to make as a result of their analysis. We have minimal professional development opportunities that have resulted in limited understanding and buy-in from stakeholders of some of our initiatives, such as Think Circa. We know that it requires more than 4 hours to really understand the why and how and the in-depth work for our staff to be able to do so with fidelity. We're still facing significant COVID impacts. And they continue to surface. We know that the social, emotional, and mental health of not only our students, but our adults. We cannot expect our students and our adults to be able to focus on academics when their hearts are still hurting. The bandwidth of our staff. We are trying to do so much, not only from our teachers, from our TAs to our custodians, to our bus driver, it's everyone from central services teams. We are stretched thin, and we know what happens when a rubber band gets stretched so thin, eventually we all break. And so these are things that we're trying to keep in mind as we continue to push. And we understand that we are continuing to operate from a place of reaction, which is never where we want to be. We want to be proactive and leading forward. And then, of course, with all of this, we know that we need more time to prioritize and focus on the plethora of data that we have, because in order for us to know the improvements that we need to make, we have to have the time to assess our data and to determine the adjustments in practice that we need to make in the effort to improve student learning outcomes. So, we want to be real, and while we've had challenges, we take those as guide for how we need to move forward. And so some of our next steps, we are continuing to focus on building capacity within school-based teams through specific problem-solving training as part of our MTSS implementation. We continue to review we will be reviewing and selecting a new core curriculum for K-8 literacy with the team of teachers, coaches, facilitators, and community stakeholders based on the findings of our literacy audit. We will review and determine effectiveness of current Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, as well as any needed resources based on student needs as demonstrated by the data. Updating and developing curriculum maps and scope and sequence of documents for all subject areas. developing professional development opportunities that will strengthen our teachers' and administrators' understanding of high-yield instructional strategies to support student learning, and to create processes for interdepartmental collaboration, alignment, and communication on the strategic plan implementation. And one thing that we did not put on here, first and foremost, we will do everything that we can to take the steps necessary to be mindful of the social, emotional, and mental health needs of not only our students, but of our staff. We cannot be, we can't show enough gratitude for our teachers and all of our staff. And we know what they're doing, we know how much they're doing, and there isn't enough that we could give. Regardless of what is asked, there's not anything that we can give to pay for that. I think this is where that intrinsic motivation that comes from all of us in our commitment to our children. But that's always at the forefront when we do any, like all of these next steps. We don't do this in a vacuum. We do so with the mind of where are our capacity of our staff? How are they? Where are they? And this is, it's like knowing when to push as much as to hold back, to be mindful of them. So I just want to say that please know that we're not knowing. And that's part of like this year when we've only had 2 hours of PD here and there on certain teacher work days. It's because we knew we couldn't push much more than that. They needed time, but yet they gave us what they could, and we asked of them 2 hours. And so we really appreciate their collaboration with us, and we're doing everything that we can to support. So we just want to, again, thank you for this opportunity to share a high-level overview of our work on Goal 1 of the strategic plan. And while the curriculum and instruction team has the privilege of leading this goal, it is the work of the whole district. And none of this would be happening if it weren't for our students, families, school teachers and staff, school leaders, and all of Central Services. We want to take this moment to acknowledge all their hard work, dedication, and commitment, and say thank you. Kamsahamnida. Thank you, board members, for your support, and we look forward to sharing with you our data updates, because we've kind of given you the overview of the key strategies, but as you know, there's data that is related to all of this work, because at the end of the day, if this doesn't result in improvement and growth in student performance, then we need to look again at what we are doing. So we look forward to sharing that data with you in a future meeting, and I'll pause now for any questions and or feedback.
Thank you so much, Ms. Myers, Ms. Wilson, and Dr. Dawson. I really personally appreciate this overview that does start with that high level, but makes it much more tangible. The strategic plan to me, and I know that we were all, as board members, wanting that tangible for our own comprehension. I really appreciate seeing the 4 key strategies and examples that you've given from each one of those. And even though we don't have the data that we're saving at this point for next meeting, although it's publicly available through our student achievement slide decks for members of the public who wanted to view it, since we've already met and discussed it, a number of us. But I really appreciate the examples of what this looks like. For example, with Cedar Ridge High School, the nomination letters, and then at Orange High School, the equity team and AP teachers coming together to do that like collaborative strategizing. I mean, that's a really great example of what we're trying to support. And so I appreciate those examples. Board members with comments and questions? Bonnie?
I have a few. First of all, thank you all, and I know how hard you're working. You exhaust me every time I listen to you speak. So thanks for that. My question is, as we look at data, one of the things that I would like to hear more about are disparities. And I'll give you an example, MTSS, and I was kind of, let me say that I'm kind of thrilled to hear the candor in we're slowing some of this down. The relaunch of MTSS is a powerful statement. It says we've got this, so thank you so much for that. As we look at that, I would be interested in how MTSS readiness looks for our schools with large minority and large economically disadvantaged populations, because that helps us to understand what's really happening with these students. Similarly, the Think Circa stuff, that was really interesting, but I'd be curious in how the participation varies based on the student population. Same thing with the 9th grade readiness, or the holding back the ninth graders, whatever you called it. But how are they participating in AVID? Are the students that we want to change participating in the programs that we're trying to change them? And then, so that would be, I would just get really, really reassured to see us start reporting to the board with a sensitivity to these disparities. And I'll just say, I am going to be curious on how the new curriculum, the idea of new curriculum overlays on this extremely stressful and changing environment. So, and finally, I'll look forward to the data. I would like to have a sense, and I realize there's no silver bullets, but a sense of when will we start to see some changes in our student outcomes? Is that a 6-month goal? Is that a year goal? Is that, so I'd love to know when we're going to start to see results, and partly so that we can course correct where we have to. So, but thank you so much.
Thanks, Bonnie. Other board members? Sarah?
I have a few questions and just want to echo the thanks to all of you for everything that you're doing. The first one is, these particular strategies, something that has struck me is that they don't address math in the same way. And I sort of understand the unique challenge of pivoting how we teach kids to read, and like that's a unique and maybe different thing, but our math results are also quite weak and in need of something. And so I just wonder if there might be sort of a strategy missing there, or obviously MTSS and things address it, but if you have an answer to that, that's great, but it may also just be a comment.
So we did purposely focus on literacy, as we know. Okay, I touched something lit up. So hopefully that didn't change anything. But that doesn't mean that our focus on all of the content areas isn't there, and especially math, because we know that national data research has shown that COVID has impacted math more so than literacy. And so we are looking at that, and as you can see, and we shared this in the Student Achievement Committee, right? The way we're looking at the math data just as much as we are the literacy. And part of us setting the goal that we did in key strategy goal 1 around improving the letter grade of all of ours. So in order to do that, we're going to have to take a look at all of our content areas plus some other leading indicators. And so when we share the data, we will be able to share some of the math data and the strategies that we've deployed to get some of the results that we're getting. And so we will share that, and as well as other subject areas, especially as it relates to how schools are given letter grades based upon student performance and other content areas.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think this, when you think about this as sort of also a communication tool, I think it communicates, as a community member, I would say, like, where's the math, even though you have strategies, like you're doing actions to work on the math, but it's not clear because those are the sort of the key strategies. So I'll yield to others. I do have a couple of other questions.
Other questions? Bill?
So just like to echo as well, thank you for all the work. I know there's a lot going on, especially throughout the district. One of the questions I have is, I know a lot of the teachers talk about having time to do professional development, especially with everything else going on. And really, we've seen a lot of turnover in the district. And so people you've trained now have left, and now you have new people coming in. I'm curious on just what is the sustainability and how that's being addressed, and the professional development part of it with, existing teachers.
Yeah, so from the stance of science of reading, letters, decodables, the training that we've done throughout this year, as we have done this work, we have continued to talk about the sustainability with new hires. Actually was just having a sidebar conversation with Joyce a few minutes ago about when are we planning the BT A new teacher hiring in August, what is that going to look like? In my mind, what is that going to look like for Hillsborough? And then the state of North Carolina has charged us with writing a sustainability plan for letters because we do have an obligation with legislation to ensure that all of our teachers do complete this by 2024. So we are currently still fleshing that out, talking with Voyager Sopris about any fast tracking opportunities. We would love to develop some sustainability here within Orange County Schools rather than being dependent upon the vendor, their trainers, their availability. We would like to have more control over that process so that we can make it meet the needs of our teachers and our schedules and our students, right? So those are all things that are in the works for sure.
Excellent.
And may I just add
Go
something
ahead.
to that, Mr. Atherton? Because outside of letters, as we have been working with our teachers and as our facilitators and coaches who are in the schools on a regular basis, what we're also noticing that we have, while all of our teachers are doing a great job, what we're also seeing that there are teachers, different programs that are even, like there are champion teachers that are showing and demonstrating even a higher level of what they're doing and how they're doing it. And so we look to rely on creating a cohort of our teacher mentors that, we have highly qualified staff that could also take on, supporting some of that work to help our teachers that may be new or just joining Orange County to get caught up and using the human capital that we have within our own teams who are still here with us.
Okay, I had one other question and then I'll give up the floor. During the presentation, y'all had talked about AVID at the high school. I'm curious, is there a focus to expose more students at the middle school level? Because AVID is such a great program and definitely a lot of skills are learned there. Is there any focus on the middle school, and then how are we identifying people to go through that program?
So that is something that we have been working on and taking a look at how each of our middle schools are implementing AVID. And, just like we ask our teachers to, personalize the supports for their students, we as a district are looking to customize how we support. And what we've noticed is we've got some school, like we have one school that we're possibly looking at going school-wide versus just a class. And we think that they're prime and ready for that. And there is that level of leadership commitment. And I think the teacher who has been able to really develop that. And then we have, a school where there's a new teacher. So we have paired the veteran teacher with the new teacher to help grow that program. And then we have a teacher that we're getting ready for a transition because we have a teacher that will be retiring. So we're looking at what we have currently and then where are each school teams to where they can take it. So we are looking at one doing school-wide and then how we can expand at the other. And then of course at the high schools, the implementation has been less consistent with different challenges, because when you're looking at their master schedule, it's more challenging to do. So we're looking at what it is that they need as support. And then one of the requests that we've been hearing is again around the training and the professional development for our teachers. So we're looking at what supports we can provide them, especially during the summer months, where they can just focus on that versus trying to teach and do that. So.
All right, thank y'all.
Can I add one thing to that question? Yeah. I'm sorry. So from the middle school recruitment stance and how that kind of happens, when students are beginning in 5th grade to prepare for their transition to middle school, that is part of the conversation that's happening as teachers kind of share student data and determine like what are going to be the best tracks for students in middle school. So 5th grade teachers can give recommendations for students who would benefit from learning the structures of ADVID and the note-taking and those types of supports. Counselors can also kind of flag students as students that need to be followed up with to encourage them to think about that. And then students have that choice with their parents as part of their course registration.
Thank you.
I know Sarah had another question, and I haven't seen any other hands.
Yes, and this is a bit of a curveball because it's not a question for any of you. It's actually a question for Dr. Doyle, if that's okay. I was really pleased when we sort of added your role in the district as a real sort of coach for principals and administrators, because it's all about sort of the whole school's improvement process. And so I was just hoping you could give us a sense of like, kind of like tactically, like how do the ways that you are spending your time day to day sort of intersect with this goal in particular and some of these strategies?
With this, what was the last word?
Yes, with this goal, goal one, that, sort of the academics goal.
So really, my work with the school principals intersects with all the goals. But definitely this goal is a priority because this is our core business, right? It is our work with students, and that's why we exist as a school system, is to make sure that students are improving their learning. But as we hear every single meeting, it takes a great deal of other supports. In terms of my work with principals, I meet with them systematically every single month, depending on the needs of their school. And so their student performance dictates how much time I spend with them. And that work really centers around their school improvement processes, which is aligned to their school executive evaluation instrument. So we are spending a great deal of time talking about their PLC processes, talking about their school improvement team meetings, and shifting those meetings more, thinking of the tactics, to use the word that you did, shifting their meetings more from operational work to strategic work, really thinking about what's the data that we're collecting and how are we using that data to improve the outcomes that we are measuring. With PLCs, obviously that's student learning. And one of the biggest challenges that our schools are having right now is, one, having the time to have those PLC meetings. We've all heard that. And also to have the time to have a good analysis of the data. They're data rich right now, but information poor. And so culling through that data and really creating simple systems for them to use that data to drive their improvement is the work that we're in right now. And each school is at a totally different place. I would say about 2/3, maybe a half of our schools have had their school improvement teams trained. And we are going to bring those school improvement teams, all of them hopefully, back for the summer for Summer Leadership Institute to assist them in really doing that work in a more systematic way. This year has been spent largely on getting their work up and running. In the past, I think many of them would share that their work has been write a plan and then bring the plan back out at the beginning of the next school year. That has not been the case this year. And to me, that's the biggest improvement, is that they are constantly talking about school improvement and the work that's happening on their campuses to improve all of their goals. Goal one being a primary one, but also their goals around mitigating COVID, as we've all been working on, engaging families. Ms. Stowe has been meeting with some of the goal teams to assist with that as well, improving their student discipline and teacher retention. So these are areas that all schools are really trying to get more systematic about, talking about, and using to improve their work. Hope that
Excellent, thank you, and sorry for calling you.
No, that was fine.
Off the sidelines over there, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Will?
The other question I had was really talking about the MTSS, and I know that y'all had said, hey, we're slowing it down, and I'm glad to hear the focus on it. One of the key aspects is the high impact tutoring, and so I'm just curious about how many total tutors do we have, and where are we finding those opportunities for students? Like what part of the day? Right. I mean, I know it's not core instruction, right? So where are we finding those opportunities?
And I was trying to, in my Rolodex in my mind, I was trying to go back to the chart where we have a list, and we can provide that in the board weekly update.
Okay.
As far as like what programs are at where. So, but just in summary, we know that at our Title I schools, during the school day, we do have Book Nook because they still had 100 seats for us that we are taking advantage of. And because we knew there were some things that were more challenging when it wasn't during the school day, so we're now doing it during the school day where there is our staff there to help. And so we have that going right now, and we should be able to get some results to see, the impact of that on their student learning in a few more weeks. We have a few more weeks of that left. And then a number of our schools through the ESSER mini grants have started their tutoring with their own staff. I want to say most of them are after school. I want to say at River Park, it might be some during the day. I also know that we have students that are going from our high schools as part of their coursework, going and providing tutoring at, for sure, I know Grady Brown and possibly one other elementary school. And then actually what we are doing, it was actually really difficult, more difficult than I was expecting, to find a vendor that could provide more high impact tutoring during the day. But our school teams that were reviewing those proposals, they just weren't satisfied with the quality and the level. So we did not move forward with that, but we are looking to pilot one of the submissions because they're 100% virtual and it's kind of like on-demand tutoring. So we are piloting that with a group of students at Orange, and that will be during the day as well as anytime. If a student is doing work during the weekend or in the evening, that resource will be available to them. But what we're also looking at, thinking ahead, we are applying for the NC Educators Corps application for their K-3 tutoring program, which actually the way that works is they will do all of the recruiting and finding of the tutors, and then we hire them, and then we make sure that they get the training that they need and the programs that we need, and then they will provide tutoring during the day next school year, because we're starting that now, so we're ready for the start of the school year. And what's also interesting is talking about, that's one of the things, and kind of going back to the Summer Careers Academy program, the thing that was so great about that is a grassroots element of it. So we actually are working with a teacher from New Hope Elementary School, as well as organizations that are offering the Beyond Expectations tutoring program, to kind of take a look at growing our own as well for other grades that are beyond third grade. It could include some of the elementary, but just really taking a look at a practice that has been successful with our ESL teacher at New Hope, and then a successful model with some of our Beyond Expectation vendors, and coming together and seeing how do we make that work for our own, and then what funds can we go after to support that. So those are some of the initiatives that are in works right now to ensure that we have a much more robust and stronger high impact tutoring program moving forward. But this year, our teachers, when we asked them, they were just like, look, you can pay me whatever, I just can't, I can't do any more. I can't give you any more than what I'm giving you already. And then those teachers who could, just because of where they are, they have, and that's how we were able to get some of the programs started at our schools. So I will share that in the board weekly update, the grid of the programs and at which schools.
Okay, and just to follow on as you were talking through that, when we went out to the high schools and talked to the students and staff, one of the very obvious things that we heard was bring back Lunch Plus, right? Give us the chance to help students, be tutored in certain areas. Are we seeing that ability? Are we now engaging on that? Are we seeing some results around that? Or just wanted to find out where we were with the Lunch Plus.
Yeah, if it's okay to invite Dr. Doyle back to the podium, I'm sure she can speak to that. Thank you.
Plus Lunch is happening actually at Orange High School, and I know Cedar Ridge is in discussions about trying to transition back to that type of system. As you know, they've had a different situation with their administrative team, and so they've been in transition with their assistant principals, and I'm sure that has been a limiting factor in terms of making that shift. But I know that's something that students have asked for, and of course, Orange has already been able to make that transition, and did so right after the holidays.
Thank y'all so much.
Hey, so if we are Done with comments and questions. I know we have one more significant item tonight. Is there anything else you want us to touch on with this, Dr. Felder? Any final comments?
No, I think we're good, and want to thank the team for
Yes.
presenting tonight.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Team. All right.
It was. And we pulled out that data, which is good.
All right, so our people,
Okay.
each and every single employee, both certified and classified, are our greatest asset. They are all part of our school community. So like fingers on a hand, where the pinky is not more important than the thumb, all staff are needed and are essential for ensuring our new strategic plan, which tonight you received an update on, Goal 1, is realized for our children. So tonight we're going to focus on our classified staff. Our classified staff in particular perform a wide range of essential work in service to our 7,300 students who are on their journeys to become productive and thriving adult members of our community. Our support staff carry out a wide variety of tasks and take on a wide variety of responsibilities, including, but certainly not limited to, security, food services, office and clerical work, school maintenance and custodial work, transportation, academic assistance services, library and media assistance, computer services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They help make our offices and departments run smoothly, while others work more behind the scenes to ensure that we provide safe learning environments. Classified staff are also instrumental with building significant relationships with students, which, as noted on this slide, are absolutely critical to student achievement. Next slide, please. So just a few stats. Our school nutrition staff, oops, that's not the picture of our school nutrition staff. There we go. Click ahead. There they go. Okay, I may need to go a little back and forth here, but that's all right. Our school nutrition staff serve approximately 546,208 meals in a year. Next slide, please. By the end of the third 9 weeks of this year, our transportation staff have already traveled 750,000 miles. That's 5,225 miles per day, which very likely means they will reach 1 million miles by the end of the school year for transporting students to and from school each day. Next slide, please. Our classified staff, including those in the roles depicted in this picture, help students feel safe and support student learning, while also supporting their social emotional development. Our maintenance staff completed 869 work orders since January 1st of this year. Next slide, please. Our teacher assistants support over 500 teachers and thousands of students each year. Next slide, please. And when the adults don't always notice, guess who does? Our students do. So our classified staff are the glue that holds our district together and the supports that keep us whole. They are the integral team members who often quietly work behind the scenes to get the details right. They are the people who we depend on daily and who respond tirelessly and humbly. Simply stated, we absolutely, positively cannot effectively run the district without our classified staff. Next slide, please. So tonight, we will present the superintendent's recommended budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. This budget is focused on one thing: compensating our classified staff in accordance to the recommendation put forth by the recent classified salary study conducted by the Hill Group and presented to the board on January 24th. So at this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Mrs. Rhonda Rath, Chief Finance Officer, who will walk us through the recommended budget. Mrs. Rath.
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. As we prepare to discuss the superintendent's recommended local budget for the 22-23 school year, let's take a brief look at the fiscal year that we are just completing. The county provided $35.4 million in per pupil funding. This was funding of $4,367 per student for the 8,110 students that we had in our district. The board approved fund balance appropriations of $4.2 million. Some of the items that were included in that were a one-time bonus of $1,200 for all permanent staff. That equated to roughly $1.3 million of the $4.2. We had $315,000 that was appropriated for kindergarten iPads. We also had $800,000 that we had to appropriate for the mandated salary and benefit increases for this fiscal year that we did not receive funding for. And of course, $100,000 was projected in receipts for fines and forfeitures. That makes up the revenue portion, or the receipts that we receive in for our local funds. On the expense side, you can see that roughly 54% of our budget supports instructional services, 36% is system-wide support services, and 10% is the ancillary services and primarily the charter schools. General statute requires that each local government and public authority have an annual balanced budget. Therefore, our revenues and our expenses must equal in accordance with that article. We are discussing the recommended budget to support the 256 locally funded positions that make up approximately 71% of the budget. And that, I mean, 71% of the local budget supports payroll. The remaining 29% is for programmatic and system support expenses. Some examples of those would be utilities, conference and workshops, supplies and materials, and non-capital equipment. Here we'll take a look at our projected student enrollment for the upcoming fiscal year. Do want to note here that these numbers are our projections. We have not received any official projections from the Department of Public Instruction at this time, but we are estimating these numbers based upon the actual ADM numbers that we have actually recorded to this point in time. We are not anticipating a reprieve from legislators this fiscal year surrounding student decreases. As you recall, the General Assembly passed legislation to hold districts harmless in fiscal years 21 and fiscal year 22 for any student decreases resulting from COVID. As a result, districts that reported actual students below the projected did not receive any adjustments in the funds that they received from state and federal resources. For the fiscal year of 23, we are projecting the number of students in Orange County schools will decline to 7,100. This is almost a 200 drop from our previous year projection. Our actual charter school enrollment is up 40 from the same time last year, and our out-of-district students are up 2. This nets us a total student base of 7,949 for the upcoming fiscal year. This is a 161 decrease overall from our previous year. As you can see in this 11-year history of student membership, Orange County total students overall have increased 4%. However, we have seen a decrease in the number of students in Orange County schools and an increase in the number of our charter students. Based on the projected students at the per pupil funding provided for the 21-22 year, we can anticipate receiving $34.7 million from Orange County. Holding our fines and forfeitures at an anticipated $100,000, that brings our total anticipated revenue for local use to $34.8 million. This is a $750,000 reduction to what we received this year. Let's take a deeper look into what our recommendation is for this upcoming fiscal year. We have a state biennium budget, which means that the budget is in place for 2 years, and we do know that we have a 2.5% average increase in the biennium budget for our certified staff and a 2.5% increase for our non-certified staff. We also know what our benefit increases are in this budget. As a result, to support the 256 positions that we have are funded on our local budget, we need an additional $1.1 million to support the state mandated increases that are in the legislation. That equates to $138 per pupil based upon our updated student numbers. Next, we'll move into our expansion budget request, which Dr. Felder has already kind of noted earlier. We're focusing at the request of the superintendent and of you on the salaries of our certified and classified staff. The first item that we have proposed in this recommended budget is the implementation of the salary study that the Hill consultants provided us and provided a report on. Based upon the recommendation that was provided in that study, we would need approximately $3.1 million to implement it in this upcoming fiscal year. We have the generous donation from our county officials of an additional $631,500 that they have committed to us, and you approved utilizing these funds in support of implementing the salary study, and they also approved that and supported that. So therefore, as a result of applying those funds to that, it brings the net increase that we would now need from commissioners to implement this to approximately $2.5 million, or $310 per pupil. The additional item that we bring forth as a recommendation is surrounding our certified staff, which is our teachers and our other staff, such as our media, guidance, counselors, social workers, et cetera, that are paid on a certified scale. Right now, we have a local supplement for these staff that is based upon their years of service in Orange County. We recommend that we provide them credit for the years of service that they have with the state. And in doing so, that would move them in the tiers of the supplement. In order to implement that for the staff that we currently have in our district, it would equate to $651,000 or an additional $82 per pupil. All of these items together give us a grand total increase in our budget of $4.2 million, or an increase of $530 per pupil. So looking at the final numbers, our anticipated revenue or receipts from the county based upon our per pupil funding held at what we received this year is $34.7 million. I did not factor in the fines and forfeitures in this scenario. We're only looking at the per pupil. The total increases that we would need to continue operations with the staff that we currently have and to implement what is in the state budget would be $1.1 million, giving us a total local current operations continuation budget of $35.8 million. For the $35.8 million, that totals $4,505 per pupil that would be needed. Again, that's roughly a $138 per pupil increase over our funding for this fiscal year. To implement the recommended salary study, as well as to implement the recommended years of service credit for our certified staff, that would bring our total budget to $38.9 million, or $4,897 per pupil. I don't have that slide here, I'm sorry. So if you take a look at what our budget was last year and look at the budget for this year, the net increase is 8.79% over what we had for last fiscal year. And again, that does not include fund balance appropriations. Now I will take any questions that you may have surrounding the recommended budget.
Thank you so much for this presentation, Ms. Rath. So let's go one at a time. Let's do one question at a time. We'll go around board members for anyone double dips. Who would like to ask the first question? Sarah?
First, let me just say I am very supportive of asking for these two areas. I think they're both incredibly important. My question is, and I don't know if you have this data with you, over the last 20, 25 years, what is the largest increase the commissioners have ever given us?
Approximately $323 is the largest that we've received.
And just, sorry, tiny follow-up. How many times have they given us more than $200 per pupil?
Not many. It's been, I would say that if you look at the history, it's been more around the 150, maybe 170 per pupil.
I only asked the question just so we can have that information in our heads, but I'm very supportive of the request. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Will?
So one question I have is, as we heard earlier in the comments, there was a request to consider master pay. And I know it's 1.2 million or 151 per pupil. Is there a reason to not include that in this request as part of the overall compensation consideration to the county commissioners?
It is not a particular reason, and if it's something that the board wishes to have in their budget that goes to the commissioners, it can definitely be added. Again, that's an additional $1.2 million that would be added to this budget.
I would definitely like us to consider that, especially since we're hearing directly from our teachers that request.
Okay, other board members with comments or questions? Bonnie?
I have a couple questions, and I'm just thank you for putting this in, and I really appreciate putting the change to the teacher supplement, so thank you for that. And by the way, if you look at this on the whole budget, it's really about a 3% increase to the total $100 million budget, so it's, that's all, I just need to say that. How many people in the classified study are state employees? And that's partly why I'm asking that, because we're giving increases to people that are in the state part of the budget, aren't we?
Yes, because we would have to fund that locally because we would be paying outside of what the state provides funding for. I don't have that number on the top of my head, but I will definitely get it for you.
It's just something we might consider presenting, because we're really putting a salary increase on a much bigger base than $35 million. Secondly, on the implementation of the classified study, is the $3.1 million to place people, so we're going from no increases for 20 years to step increases of roughly 1.5% a year. So is the $3.1 million for just placing people on the new scale?
Yes, that is correct. It will be to place them on the scale. There will be a reoccurring expenditure because we will be having to then begin moving the people. We can have a reoccurring expenditure, or
Right.
we could make the decision to not. The 3.1 million is to place everybody on the scale where they would need to be right now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone who hasn't asked a question yet, have one?
Well, I don't have a question, but I'd like to thank you, Rhonda, and the staff. That's a lot of work that
Thank you.
you've done, and it made it easy for us to understand. Thanks a lot. And I absolutely support your, the recommendation. Let me just say that as well.
Okay.
Jennifer, Hillary?
I just echo many thanks and support. Thank you.
I support the recommendation as well.
Thank you.
Very good.
Okay, further questions? I know some people probably have a few. Will?
So the question I have is, and I kind of asked this in the budget committee, was, given the recommendation, what is the cost to sustain this? So if we go in and ask for this, and we know that there will be another step, next year, what are we going to need to ask the commissioners for the following year or going forward? Do we have those numbers yet?
We're working on those, and there's several scenarios. We know that there would be if the board elected to step everyone based upon the recommendation of the 1.5%, there would be an additional cost that would be associated with that in each upcoming year, because now individuals would be moving 1.5% on the scale. It will not be as great as the 3.1 million to place everyone on the scale, because we're catching up for, a very long period of time. The ultimate goal would be to place everyone on the scale and then to have increases each subsequent year, so that we don't get back into salary compression that we're in now. Other options could be that the step could be a less percentage than what was recommended, or we could actually implement what some other districts across the state have looked at, where they only move every 3 years, for example. So, we're looking at those scenarios and costing those scenarios to see what the potential impact would be to the budget.
So would that mean, sorry, just a follow-up question. So would that mean this recommendation of the 3.1, the 651,000 would adjust based on that to sustain it? Or would we still go in and ask for this and then possibly adjust it the following year? Meaning we're going to a step every year with this, and then next year we may go, no, we can't sustain it, we're going to go to something else. I'm just trying to understand, are we going to start with possibly the multiple steps, or are we going to start with the every step every year and then determine what we do to sustain it? I'm just trying to figure out which one comes first.
Right, yeah, I hear you. I believe the superintendent's wish, and part of this recommendation, is that we go forward with the recommended salary scales, which would be the first year it'd be 3.1 million. And then after that, each year, staff would increase 1.5%. So that would be our ultimate goal, is to get the 3.1 and then 1.5%.
So definitely, I would like to know the sustaining of that when we get to that part. So thank you.
Thank you. Ronnie, go ahead.
So I just, we have 2.5% happening this year and 2.5% happening next year. which each one of those is going to trigger roughly $1 million increase that we'll need for continuation. Would that, so with the proposed 1.5%, would that be part of the 2.5%, or are we proposing 4%?
It would be part of the 2.5%.
Okay, so technically, we could go for 3 years before we do the first step. Technically, right? Because that's legislated already, the 2.5% is, and I guess I have a question of, do we have a responsibility to talk about this possible recurring expense with the county commissioners? Or ask, because it's not our money. I like to remind myself it's not our money.
Okay, Sarah?
Just a context thing as we're thinking about moving forward to the commissioners. Are we aware yet of what the details are in Chapel Hill's salary study? And my understanding was that they were also having a salary study and it was going to impact their ask to the commissioners.
I'm not aware of the details. I do know that they, I believe, have brought that information before their board. When I spoke last with that finance officer, of course, the ask that they had at that time was higher than ours. It was more around $600 per pupil.
Final thoughts or questions? Will?
So just a follow-up thought or question to the discussion of the multiple steps. Even if we went to a 3-year step, it doesn't mean it would be 0, because it really depends where our staff is in that step. So you could say it's 3 years, but 50% of the people move to the next step just because of where it falls. So we will have to be careful around that.
Yeah, or not doing, some counties, as you know, are saying the steps are for placement only, and
dependent upon funding.
Right. I just have, as you look to Chapel Hill, I think they're also proposing an increase to their teacher supplement. So that would be part of their $600 per pupil. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rath. Really appreciate this presentation and all the processing that's happened in Budget Committee in recent weeks as well. It's been a long time to get it all digestible, and I think we're getting closer. Dr. Felder, do you have any?
I just want to say thank you to the board for your support of this recommended budget, and of course to Ms. Rath for all of her work in preparing to present the recommended budget. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a clarifying question, if you don't mind. Since at the next meeting is when we have the budget public hearing, when you're able to receive comments, and then afterwards, we start shifting to this becoming the board's budget. It won't any longer be the superintendent's budget, it will become the board's. For clarity, is it the wish of the board for master's pay of the $1.2 million to be added back into your ask?
Do we need to decide this right now? Is that what you want us to do?
Well, I guess I would like a little feedback as to whether or not it's the wish of the majority of the board to see this as part of their ask.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, I feel like we discussed this probably it was a budget meeting, and it seems like we weren't able to tackle everything, and we started with these, is my recollection. What do you remember, Brenda?
That was exactly.
So other board members with thoughts about that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Carrie, what you just said?
The reason it was not included at this point is, as we discussed everything we were trying to include, we felt we had to start with the compression first, was what I remember.
And the shift to the supplements, so that they're actually for your total years of experience rather than in the district, which I think is really, really important.
And then being able to hold it up in years to come.
Yeah, I remember us saying we should ask for what we want. And so that's where I'm landing. I think if we're, serious about trying to address the key items, for me, it's asking for what we want and what we think our teachers need. So that's where I am.
Okay, Brenda, I hear you
No,
agree
can
with
we
that
shoot
too.
you, can I shoot you an email?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone who has further comments about that they want to make tonight before we close?
I just think I need a little more time to think about it personally.
Sure.
I don't know what the numbers look like, in terms of how many teachers don't have master's pay and how it affects them. What I'm noticing is that many of our districts are increasing their supplements. And so, moving to a years of service supplement is a critical move for us. If we don't do that, we're substandard now, if you ask me, in terms of our teacher pay. There's a question about should we just throw an increase in the supplement in order to be competitive? Because Durham's going up, Wake's going up, Chapel Hill's going up. Chapel Hill and Wake are so much higher than us, it's almost comical. But I just wonder if we want to just go ahead and propose a higher supplement, just a question.
Okay, well, we can all give you feedback, Ms. Rath, is that possible?
We have a budget committee coming up as well,
week.
so we can pound it out there.
Yeah, great. That's the appropriate
Thank you.
spot.
All right, thank you so much. Dr. Felder, is there anything else that we have on the table to
No,
discuss
this
before
concludes all agenda items for today.
Well, then.
Well,
Well,
look
Madam
at
Chair,
us.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
A motion from Ms. Stevens and a second from Ms. McKenzie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you.
You.